And we're live. What's up, everybody? It's Friday. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos. Juma Mubarak. Happy weekend. What's going on, everybody? I normally don't do Friday night streams, but here we are. Let's do this. I don't know if y'all saw, but a few days ago, maybe yesterday, 2 days ago, John Spencer and Medhi Hasan had a debate on the Piers Morgan Show. And, let me maybe just start by sharing my bias when it comes to reviewing this. John Spencer is one of the people I like least in terms of ideologically speaking. He's one of the greatest disseminators of misinformation about Israel's operation in Gaza. A lot of the narratives we still hear people sharing today, he helped spread. For example, one of them being that the civilian to combatant ratio average throughout history in urban warfare is 9-to-1. There's no basis for that. It's closer to around 1.5-to-1. He was spreading that a lot. Another one is that the civilian to combatant ratio in Gaza is 1-to-1. Zero basis for that whatsoever. It's significantly higher. Again, I'm not going to get into the whole analysis here. I've done a lot of content on that. This is just going to be the review. I just want to express my bias before we get into it. And the third is he often mentions Mosul being similar civilian to combatant ratio to Gaza or worse. But in Mosul, a third of the casualties were from ISIS and not even from U.S. forces. So it's just not. He conveniently leaves that out, and it paints a completely different picture. That said, so as much as I want to see Medhi destroy him and ruin his career because he is just a pro-war propagandist, I will review this in as fair a way as possible. That's my commitment to you all. So let's get the show going. And I see, okay, it's streaming on many platforms. Viewers, let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. Let's keep the chat civil. Let's get the show on the road. And you could already see how they decided a nice clickbaity title. They called it "This is Genocide." Medhi Hasan versus Major Hassan's Medhi Hasan versus Major John Spencer. I'm going to speed it up. I'm going to do 1.5 speed. If you're watching this after the fact, you could slow it down. Let's do this. Okay. So instead of 30 minutes, it should be around 20 minutes. Well, not with commentary. And viewers, let me know that you could hear the audio coming in clearly.
The bombardment is wholly disproportionate. The civilian death toll and suffering is intolerable. The denial of aid is unacceptable. These are not the words of democratic leaders about Putin's war on Ukraine, but those of the UK, France, and Canada about Israel's ongoing offensive in Gaza. President Trump now says it's time for Netanyahu to wrap it up. Israel is allowing some aid to trickle into Gaza after an 11-week blockade, but aid workers say it's a drop in the ocean. And the US president has acknowledged that a lot of people in Gaza are starving. Shamefully, Hamas still holds 58 hostages and is watching the total destruction of Gaza and its people because it doesn't want peace and it doesn't value human life. It's increasingly difficult to argue that the exact same statement doesn't apply to Netanyahu's Israeli government. Israel's war on Hamas was not a genocide, but genocide isn't something that happens with the push of a button. A justified war can end with atrocities that stain humanity, as many have through history. So who's going to stop this one before it does, if it hasn't already? Well, joining me now is Medhi Hasan, the editor-in-chief and CEO of Zatea, and retired Major John Spencer, chair of urban warfare studies at the Modern War Institute. Okay, let's get into this. Medhi, welcome back to Uncensored. Listen, you and I have talked about this war in Gaza for ever since it started, this phase of the 75-year conflict. And I have resisted going as far as you have done in your criticism of the Israeli government. I resist no more. I think we've reached common ground about what we view is happening and has been happening through this period of this blockade, which frankly is just starvation of the people there, including so many innocent young women and children. And I think that the incessant bombing and killing, and we don't know how many civilians have been killed, but it is on a daily basis. It looks like hundreds of people every day, with no apparent attempt, it seems to me, to have any real plan for how this ends or what happens when it ends, other than if you look at what Smotrich has been saying, probably the most right-wing member of a very right-wing government, he is talking in a genocidal language about kicking all the Palestinians out. So I think you and I have reached a place in the last few weeks where we are in agreement. But my question for you, Medhi, is how does this end?
First of all, I mean, credit to Piers for acknowledging that he changed his view on this. I've heard people speculate that he's only doing it now because it's a more popular opinion. I don't know, but regardless, a lot of news anchors and journalists have not taken the anti-war stance that Piers has taken, and he deserves credit for that. We need more people doing that.
I don't know the answer to that question, Piers, and I'm glad we're in agreement. I wish we weren't. Actually, I wish I had been wrong and you were right. I wish that a year ago when I said on your show, you said, well, if it's not about the hostages, what's it about? And I said, it's about depopulating Gaza. It's about conquering Gaza. I wish I'd been wrong. But as you said, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister in the Israeli government, said this week, we are there to conquer, cleanse, and remain. Those are his words. We are disassembling Gaza, he said. We are leaving it as piles of rubble. He says, we're doing something that no one's done in the world before. He bragged out loud, and he said, yes, the Gazans will have to leave. So all of those things are stuff some of us were saying last year. I wish we hadn't been vindicated in this horrific way. The killing is ongoing. The starvation is ongoing. And look, I do hope that a dam is bursting. You mentioned the genocide word. Shmuel Lederman, who is an Israeli researcher of genocide, spent much of 2024 saying it's not a genocide, it's not a genocide.
Just real quick, look how John's just shaking his head. No, no, no. John's not a scholar on genocide, right? You have pretty much every scholar and academic on genocide say it was, but John Spencer, who's literally chief of urban warfare, so his whole thing is how do you fight war? I don't think is an authority on how to determine if something's a genocide or not. But he was interviewed by a Dutch newspaper last week. He said, I've changed my position. It is a genocide. He said, in my field, there's a consensus among genocide scholars that it's a genocide. In fact, that Dutch newspaper interviewed 7 leading scholars of genocide. Every single one said, we think what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. In fact, this week, Piers, you have an Israeli former general, Yair Golan, saying a sane country does not attack civilians, does not kill babies as a hobby, and does not expel civilian populations. That is Yair Golan, the former deputy chief of the Israeli military, prominent Israeli politician. He was here on October the 7th, fought Hamas himself on October the 7th. This is what he said this week.
Okay, John Spencer, you've been kind of pulling a lot of faces there. You obviously don't agree. But given that so many allies of Israel are now raising massive alarm bells about what is happening, you can't be comfortable, surely, with what is going on in Gaza, are you?
Okay, hold on. I want to make a little prediction here. The pro-war camp is so predictable. He said you can't be comfortable. He's going to say, of course not. It's horrible. He's going to show empathy, and then he's going to put it all on Hamas. This is the MO 100% of the times. If I'm wrong, I owe you all a drink, okay?
Absolutely not. I think it's horrible. I think there are people suffering. I just am not misinformed on who is the cause of that suffering, that it isn't Israel, that war isn't a crime. War should be avoided at all costs, and Israel did that. And this war didn't start 75 years ago. This war started on October 7th when Hamas invaded Israel and tried to destroy and actually did genocidal acts. I agree that there's a lot of suffering happening in Gaza, and it's the list of people who are responsible. Israel's not on it in my list. Hamas is on it, and I actually have solutions. You asked Medhi for a solution. I have solutions based on the history of war. Number one solution is to encourage Egypt to open the gate that they control and create a humanitarian zone. Let every woman, child, and elderly person out of Gaza, just like you and I have discussed in the past about Ukraine. 5 million women, children, elderly left Ukraine to escape Russia's evil bombardments. That could be done today, and it's criminal that it hasn't happened today. Now, Medhi uses experts, although I thought credentialism and expert theory was a bad thing today. I've been on the ground, although I've heard that that's a bad thing as well. And what's missing here is, again, which is why I was shaking my head, is that you believe, based on statements of politicians that are...
So here's another thing. He says, I've been on the ground. That means they let him see Gaza, but they don't let journalists in. They're not going to let Medhi and Piers in. You need to be a pro-Israel journalist or commentator to be let into Gaza. So any appeal to his authority or experience because he got let in is simply a fact that he's pro-Israel.
Or not the actual government and the decision makers of the institution, that Israel is intentionally causing this harm. That's false as well. Point the finger at Hamas, as you've said in the past, Piers, and I'm sorry we've lost you. Maybe you and I can go to Gaza because it's not true.
Well, actually, it's interesting. Look, just on that, John, look, you haven't lost me. I still think Hamas is a terrorist organization which committed one of the worst terrorist crimes of the last century. And they should absolutely no longer have any power in that region. They should absolutely be dismantled as a political force and the rest of it. I just see no evidence that Israel's mission statement to eradicate Hamas has worked. In fact, conversely, more and more reports are coming out that for every Hamas terrorist who's been killed, they're being replaced by 4 or 5 people who share that ideology. So the mission statement isn't working. And you say that Israel is not intentionally killing innocent people, but it knows it is killing a lot of innocent people. So its argument is we're going after Hamas, they're embedded in civilian populations, but they are killing a lot of innocent civilians every single day. And not just killing them, they're now starving them, which will also lead to death, which is a deliberate, willful act of trying to kill people. Would you accept that?
So real quick, just more about the concept of culpability. Who's responsible? Because this is one of the main arguments of the pro-war camp. They conveniently make it seem like there's no such thing as shared responsibility, when this is just a concept we accept that is perfectly normal in society. Of course, there's shared responsibility. There are many instances where more than one person could be responsible for something bad happening. I mean, let's just give a few examples. Let's say you have a hostage situation in a school. SWAT team comes in. They decide, you know what, we don't want to risk our own. We're just going to blow up the whole school. you could very clearly say, the hostage takers are responsible, but that you can't just blow up a school with children in it and then blame entirely the hostage takers. Like, shared culpability is a very common concept that we live with. But it's fascinating how when it comes to this, like, no, what? Hamas is fully responsible. Israel could literally nuke Gaza. No, but Hamas needs to surrender and release the hostages, right? It's like, it's not coherent. And we literally live our lives with a very, it's not even a concept we talk about because it's just built into society. It's logical. And this doesn't make moral sense. If you genuinely care about harming civilians, and let's say Hamas doesn't care, then you can't use their lack of morality to determine your lack of morality, right? So if you think that Hamas is evil and should be destroyed, how are you then also going to say they are then responsible for the well-being of their citizens? And if they're not, then that's not on us. That doesn't make any logical or moral sense. It's just not a coherent argument, but it's fascinating how popular it is. I guess, propaganda doesn't need to be logical. It just needs to be compelling. I think this is one of the flaws we have in this world, that people are compelled by dumb shit. But obviously, more than one party could be responsible. Let's see what he says about the starvation. Let's see how he spins this one.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Actually, I want to make a prediction. Maybe he'll say it's not the responsibility of one warring party to provide aid to another warring party. But if they control all the borders, then they are responsible for letting aid in. But let's see what he says.
No, I mean,
Starving people?
You can have your own opinions based on your assessment. Yeah, absolutely not starving people. So you're talking about the last 2 months of trucks not going in because Hamas was diverting it. Although the 42 days prior to that, 25,000 trucks went into Gaza. There's absolutely people hungry in Gaza. But Israel is not intentionally starving civilians. Is it trying to starve Hamas combatants in this war that was started on October 7th? No, the evidence doesn't show that. This is the damn lies of statistics and using certain organizations that are using trusted agents. Here's a good, for instance, recently, Medhi put on a British doctor in southern Gaza on his show. Maybe you've had him on, and he's talking about how bad the hospitals are. He's sitting in a European hospital in southern Gaza where they just killed Mohammed Sinwar, who was in a tunnel underneath the hospital. This double standard about Israel, this double standard about war is problematic, Piers, and here's why. We're going to validate the practice of taking hostages. We're going to validate the use of your own population as human shields. That's what Hamas is doing. Now, innocent civilians, of course, innocent civilians have died because Hamas does things like not let them evacuate when they're told to evacuate, like actually holding children in their arms while they shoot at the IDF.
Ooh, that is a lie that has never been confirmed. Okay, I see he's going full propaganda here. So there's this caricature of human shields where Hamas will literally hide behind a civilian while shooting. There is not a single documented case of this. Not one. Not one. And if somebody says there's a documented case, send it to me. Prove me wrong. Not one. Almost every single unit in the IDF has at least one GoPro, if not multiple GoPros. Any claim that's made about how Hamas operates that is not proven with video evidence by Israel should be taken with a grain of salt. There could be maybe some outlier actions, but talking about these trends of behaviors, it's very easy to prove that with video evidence. There's no video evidence, it's a lie. Hamas holding a baby and shooting at the IDF, there's not one documented case of that happening. It's just complete bullshit. Now, let me go big screen again. Now, look what he said. He said they're not trying to starve civilians. They're trying to starve Hamas. But a minute before that, he said Hamas stole the aid. Okay, so Hamas is storing aid. Let's take his word for it. If they're storing aid, and then we're trying to starve them, who's going to starve first, the civilians or Hamas who's stealing aid? That's not a legitimate argument. Obviously, if Hamas stole aid, they have food. It's the civilians that don't. And who's the first to die of malnutrition and hunger? It's very young children, and already around 24 children have died from malnutrition in the past few weeks. So starvation already started killing young children and the elderly. That's a bullshit argument. It makes no sense. I hope Medhi hits him hard on this.
And again, we can go, and Medhi can probably go with Al Jazeera to the Hamas side and look for it ourselves on what you think Israel is trying to do. I also have what did you want Israel to do on October 7th? And had the world not stopped and done things like don't go to Rafah where the hostages are, where Yahya Sinwar is,
all right,
this war would be over by now.
Okay, I'll bring Medhi to respond. I mean, the one thing I would say is Israel's ongoing refusal to allow...
Wait, what he just said, he said if there wasn't pressure telling Israel what to do and what not to do, this war would be over. Based on what? Based on what? U.S. pressure on Israel is not what has stopped Israel from conquering all of Gaza. Israel's strategy has been very risk averse. We don't want to lose our own, right? So we're being very careful, and we're not holding territory for long. We're destroying a neighborhood, conquering it, and then leaving, and then they come back. Holding territory requires a lot of resources, a lot of soldiers, and you're going to lose a lot more soldiers. We're not doing this because of pressure. That's just not an argument. It's ridiculous. And I hope, again, let's see Medhi's response, but I hope he gets him on these points.
Our international journalists to operate freely in Gaza is a suppression of us uncovering the reality. You say come into Gaza.
That's
actually,
not true. Fox News.
No. Israel
Yanks,
has
CNN.
barred almost every international journalist from getting anywhere near it. You know that, and I know that, and it's
I'll be there for my sixth time.
Well, it's unprecedented.
Of course, he's been there for his sixth time, so he could continue the propaganda.
International journalists to be banned in this way from a war zone. It's unprecedented, and it does beg the question, John, why? Now, Medhi, your response to what John has said there. Everybody knows how much I enjoy my tea. I'm very happy you're all just like the
I mean, I don't know how I can respond. So much gaslighting from the very beginning. John has been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as an embed. I love it when John and Douglas Murray and these people say, oh, we've been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as guests of the Israeli military that's doing the killing, starving, and maiming. And you've come back and done exactly what they wanted to do. You've done their propaganda for them. Journalists have not been allowed freely into Gaza. That's why every major media organization on planet Earth has said to the Israeli government, you must allow journalists in. The Palestinian journalists who are there have been killed in record numbers. Of course, Piers, you're right. They want to hide what they're doing. That's why they're killing the journalists there and blocking the journalists from coming in. This idea that he's been on the ground. Yeah, I did interview a doctor, a British plastic surgeon, Dr. Tom Patoka. And by the way, he wasn't in the European hospital because the hospital got bombed by Israel. So he was in another hospital. And he talked to me about how he has to treat patients who have maggots in their wounds. He has to treat patients without limbs. He has to treat children. I've interviewed multiple doctors on the ground in Gaza, actually in Gaza, not hanging around with Israeli military. And they've all said the same thing. American doctors, British doctors, Canadian doctors. They've all talked about how many kids they saw with sniper bullets to the head and chest. Israel does intentionally kill civilians. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant were indicted at the International Criminal Court for precisely those charges, for willful killing of Palestinians, for murder and persecution. That's why they've been indicted. That's why every human rights group in the world says war crimes are being committed. They've killed people holding white flags. We've seen it with our own eyes. They've bombed buildings without warning with families inside, like the Al Dos family that I often cite in October 2023. They've dropped 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps full of hundreds of people. They have killed 7 aid workers in a clearly marked World Central Kitchen aid convoy. They've bombed World Food Programme convoys, leading to Cindy McCain, the wife of the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime, to come out and condemn Israel for attacking aid workers. John wants you to ignore Cindy McCain and British and American doctors and human rights groups and your own lying eyes watching people with white flags being gunned down. He wants you to believe him and his Israeli military minders.
Okay, Medhi, before we go.
So I don't even know if I need to do commentary. Medhi's killing it. I will say one thing, if I just to try to give a little pushback to Medhi. He made one claim that is still a little bit speculative. Like all the war crimes he just described are true. The one that we still don't know is that Israel's intentionally targeting journalists. You could see a motive for them to want to do that, so there's less reporting. But again, it's still in the realm of speculation. So I just it's important to put that out there.
Go back to John to respond to that. The question that he raised, I think I've asked you this before, but I'm still curious about, given the way this has all played out, how should, and I saw Bassem Youssef being asked this on Trigonometry last week, I think it was, and he struggled to answer, how should Israel have responded to a terrorist attack, which, just to remind viewers, over 1,200 people were murdered, nearly 7,000 more were wounded, over 250 people, including babies and Holocaust survivors, were kidnapped and taken hostage, and many of those have died. How should Israel have responded to the biggest attack on its people and its land since its existence?
So you know what? Good on Piers for asking this question. This is a very challenging question. Like most people don't have a good answer for this. So good on him for asking. Let's see what he said.
So there's no easy answer to that question, Piers, and you might not know the answer I give you, which is that Israel should have responded by abiding by international law, by sticking with the rules of armed conflict, by targeting only the people they believe carried out the crime. They should have used an international coalition of countries that was fully behind them. The majority of the world was behind Israel after the tragedy of October the 7th. And by the way, I have a longer memory than maybe some people in this country. After 9/11, I got asked the same question. Well, what should we do if we don't bomb Afghanistan? What should we do if we don't go after bin Laden, etc.? How did that work out? 23 years later, your pal Donald Trump is taking pictures with the former leader of Al-Qaeda, who's still on a globally designated terrorist wanted list, right? That's where we claim the war on terror was a complete failure. And some of us who saw that, and by the way, Joe Biden even said this in one of his more coherent moments. He said Israel should learn from our lessons. Israel did not learn from the US lessons. And actually, even if you forget about all the innocent Palestinians they killed, even if you don't give a shit about the people of Gaza, even if you only care about the people of Israel, Israel's not any safer today. Israel is not winning this war. John said on Times Radio a year ago, I went back and checked, March of last year, John said, we're very close to winning. Israel's close to victory. Over a year later, they're not close to victory. They're just starving children and denying baby formula. And the former Israeli general who ran the Gaza division said a few months ago, Hamas is winning this war. So they've not made themselves any more secure. I don't have some perfect solution for what they should have done October 7th, but I do think they shouldn't have killed 50 to 100,000 people, and they should have made themselves less secure. And by the way, the Prime Minister should have resigned because he's the one who let it happen on his watch.
Well, I said.
Okay, so that's a good answer, and let me elaborate on that because there's some more things that we can that we can just to like get into the specifics of what Israel could have done. So first of all, proper evacuations. Gaza is densely populated, Hamas is in a tunnel city underneath. So the strategy of flattening Gaza, while Hamas has where to hide and civilians have nowhere to go, is exceptionally cruel and exceptionally ineffective because they're underground while civilians are not. And then people say, oh, but we couldn't get them out. No one let them out. No. That's not an excuse. You could get them out. You could work with the international community to do evacuations. You could also build a massive refugee camp in the Negev. That's the desert in Israel proper, and let women, children, and elderly out, and men who pass background checks. And for the first time, Israelis often say they're taught to hate us. They're taught these awful things in schools. Well, here's an opportunity. If you let them into your territory and show them a better life, you could, for the first time, show them that you're not evil and that you actually care about them. But instead we left them there and flattened Gaza on top of the civilian population while Hamas is hiding. That's why we have the high civilian to combatant ratio in the 21st century. So that's one. Second is just levels of proportionality. We had whistleblowers say that they were getting permissions to do airstrikes that would kill 25 civilians just to get one combatant. That's unheard of. That's proportionality unheard of. And then they were saying they got permission to kill triple-digit civilians for one high-level commander. These are unheard of levels of proportionality. We also send our ground troops in under, on the back of Netanyahu's speech, describing Gazans as Amalek, which are the people that the Jews genocided in the Bible. So you send an angry, undisciplined military in with the message of genocide, essentially, and then you have very little internal regulation against war crimes. So we've seen an excess of war crimes from individual soldiers and very little accountability. And one of the ways we know there's an excess of war crimes is because soldiers are actually filming them with their cell phones, which also displays a lack of discipline. And also it displays that they know they won't get in trouble if they're literally uploading them burning houses or stealing aid or stealing things from home or destroying medical infrastructure or other vital infrastructure. All this has been filmed by IDF and uploaded to their social media. Think about how much courage you need to upload this to social media. You need to know that there won't be repercussions. So these are all things we very easily could have done different. And this is the military route. I think there's always a non-military solution, or almost always a non-military solution. And we're not really wired to we're all wired, oh, you hit us, we need to strike back. I know it's unpopular. It's very unpopular to propose something that's not respond to violence with violence. So I'm not even going to get into that. But I do want to put it out there that there are non-military solutions to problems we face. But had you decided you want to go down a military route, there's a lot you could have done differently. This whole thing is like, what would you have done? Okay, well, a whole lot different. A whole lot different.
Certainly agree with that. And I do think there'll be a day of reckoning for Netanyahu. The problem is, John, that Netanyahu is facing corruption charges in a trial, which may well lead to his imprisonment if he's convicted. So there's no motivation for him to bring this to an end anytime soon. And I agree with Medhi. This was supposed to have been a war that Israel, with its massively superior military, could have ended quite quickly. My question for you, John, you're a military expert, is when you look at the way that Israel went after Hezbollah with that extraordinary pager attack that was unleashed on 3,000 members of Hezbollah, you think if you've got the capability to do that through Mossad and your other agencies, there were only 25,000 Hamas terrorists, we believe, at the start of this war. Why could they not have deployed similar sophisticated technology in a way that did not involve the mass slaughter of so many civilians in a place where the population is 50% under 18?
Sure. I mean, not to say that experts are a good thing, but Medhi has said he doesn't know much about military affairs, but he does talk about it a lot. So in your question, it's pretty easy to answer, is that it's a clear sign that Israel did disengage from Gaza. And the human intelligence that was required to pull off the historic pager operation against Hezbollah couldn't be replicated because Israel didn't have that level of intelligence in Gaza because it had disengaged and allowed Hamas to build this, what is a military challenge no military has faced in the history of really any war. And the fact that Hezbollah did let the civilians get.
So he is right about that. If you do want to look at it in terms of military operations, this is one of the hardest environments to fight in. Hamas, they're just a fraction of the strength of Israel, right? They have no way to fight them by regular means. So they built a very sophisticated labyrinth under Gaza that makes it very hard to fight them. I mean, this is really the only way they can not just get slaughtered en masse by Israel. Instead, the civilians get slaughtered in mass. But it's true that he's saying that this is a very tough war to fight, without a doubt. Let's see what he suggests.
Southern Lebanon as the war began against them is a telling marker of why people can't understand what's going on in Gaza. Now, you didn't ask me the question of what Israel should have done, because I actually teach urban warfare at this scale. I've actually studied the history of urban warfare from Stalingrad to Fallujah, Mosul, Mawar, you name it. And when I said those statements on Time Radio, if the world would have allowed Israel to continue, 5 divisions going heavy against Hamas, moving civilians out of harm's way, we'd be in a different place. And this hypocrisy of the numbers, right? So there's 3 types of lies, damn lies, and statistics. There's been 85,000 children under the age of 5 who have died from starvation in Yemen since the Yemen civil war. I don't see protests and I don't see daily coverage on what's going on in Yemen, where there's 2 million people actually starving.
Okay, so I don't see people protesting about Yemen. That's irrelevant. If you want to say that there's a double standard in the world, that doesn't absolve Israel of their morality. But if you look at the rate of children being killed in Gaza relative to population size and account for duration, children in Gaza are dying at a far higher rate than in Yemen. It's not even comparable. No, it's not even comparable. In addition to that, you have the Palestinian movement has had decades, or the Palestinian cause has decades to build this movement in the West. So they do effectively bring attention to their cause. So Yemens do not have that same reach. There's no pro-Yemen movement against Saudi Arabia. It's just different. And also Israel holds a special status in the West. They're funded and blindly supported by the United States. They're like the little child of the US, and the US will veto them at the UN, blank check to fight wars. Every presidential debate, Israel's a topic. Yeah, Israel literally gets special institutionalized attention. And then when the masses give it institutionalized attention, they're like, wait a minute, what's this hypocrisy? But the hypocrisy starts on the institutional level. People are responding to that. And again, if you look at relative to population size and duration, the rate of children dying in Gaza is the highest since the Rwanda genocide of 1994. Now, granted, Rwanda was much worse, but there's no conflict in the 21st century where you have nearly that rate of children dying. If you want to compare it to Syria, which was horrific, 40x higher rate of children being killed in Gaza than in Syria. Worlds apart. It's just worlds apart.
So I actually know what is possible to achieve the goals that Israel said, and I've interviewed Prime Minister Netanyahu myself. The goals haven't changed, and they are achievable. And if you don't achieve them, you're only going to continue the cycle of violence. And had the world not stopped Israel back when it said, don't go to Rafah, you can't use big bombs against people in tunnels. This is crazy on what we're saying.
Okay, so again, John just laid out a plan. He said, you need massive ground troops. You need to send them in. You need to control all of Gaza. Israel didn't do that because of the resources and risk it would take. The world didn't stop them from implementing that strategy. Yeah, there was pressure about not going into Rafah, but they did go into Rafah. So this is literally Netanyahu's failure. He's proposing a strategy vastly different from Netanyahu's strategy, but instead of critiquing Netanyahu, he's somehow blaming the international community. The international community in no way stopped Netanyahu from doing what Spencer is suggesting. So he's kind of like just the Netanyahu bootlicker, the fact that he won't even acknowledge that Netanyahu didn't do this in the right way.
Setting the standard for this Israeli standard for war. If it continues, any nation trying to defend itself after being an attempted actual genocide against its people won't be able to. So I'm saying that Israel has done more to protect civilians in war, even when Hamas, who uses human sacrifice, is trying to get civilians killed. And they say this isn't John Spencer's word. Israel's done more to protect civilians than any other military in any comparable situation against something that nobody has seen as this evil of Hamas.
But if you're right, John, if you're right, why are so many of Israel's allies now turning on Israel? Why is the UK?
So here's another thing. They've done more than anybody. I mean, there's something deceptive about this. So I don't know how he's measuring that, but let's assume what he's saying is right. They've done more. Let's say that it's not enough to do more if you're acting more aggressively, right? So we often hear Israel is the only country that does roof tapping. They'll warn before they destroy a building. Other countries have done it, but the reason Israel does more roof tapping than any other country is because other countries don't destroy this much civilian infrastructure. You don't tap on a roof if there's combatants inside, because then they leave. You tap on a roof if it's literally just civilians. So it's like technically Israel's doing more because they're doing more roof tapping, but they're only doing more roof tapping because they have a higher level of aggression and more destruction towards civilian infrastructure. So it's deceptive to say they're doing more when their level of aggression is significantly more, right? So let's say they're doing 20% more to protect civilians than average, but their aggression is 200% more. That, again, so that 20% more is negligible. And that's why we're seeing the highest rate of children being killed, the highest civilian to combatant ratio, the highest percentage of the total civilian population killed. Israel currently holds the record for all these stats in the 21st century. And I know there's some propagandists that try to challenge this and say low civilian to combatant ratio. Not a single one. There's been many topics. I've had debates on various topics throughout the years. This is the first one no one's willing to debate me on. Not a single person. I've challenged many people. Even John Spencer. Kim Iverson tried to get a debate going between... Kim Iverson tried getting a debate between John Spencer and I. He rejected. And it's possible my name's not big enough, but he also may have been intimidated by me being former IDF, so he doesn't have his appeal to authority of being a military man. I don't know. But the amount of people who talk about this being low civilian to combatant ratio, low civilian death toll, I challenge anybody watching this, or if you know people with this narrative who you think are willing to debate, let's do a public debate. I challenge you. And the reason why no one's agreed to debate me on this is because most people have not researched it themselves. They're listening to propagandists like John Spencer. If they do and when you don't do the research, you're not comfortable debating. Makes sense, understandably. Once you do the research, you understand that you can't hold your own on a debate on such a topic. The data is just very clear. You need to manipulate the data like people like John Spencer, Eisenberg, and Andrew Fox do in order to make it seem like there's this low civilian to combatant ratio. But in honest review of the data, it very, very clearly supports what I'm saying. And it's not for no reason nobody's willing to debate this. Because other topics, people will debate no problem. It's this one specifically, people talk big game. When you challenge them at a public debate, they find an excuse why not. By the way, John Spencer blocked me on Twitter for calling him out on this shit.
Calling it morally unjustifiable. Why is the UK, France, and Canada combined to say they strongly oppose the expansion of Israel's military operations in Gaza? The level of human suffering is intolerable. They call for the release of the remaining hostages. Of course, they should be released, but they say this escalation by Israel is wholly disproportionate. Donald Trump didn't even visit Netanyahu when he went to the Middle East for the week, right? All these things are adding up to me to a collective view by Israel's allies that they are losing the support of the people they should normally most rely on. So, you're very confident everything they're doing is completely justified, but their own main allies are not.
Well, I think each ally should ask their own militaries and their experts within their country, like the UK. Why don't you ask Sir Andrew Roberts what the UK military would have done had that happened on UK soil? Because I can tell you what the United States would have done. And they would have also answered with overwhelming. You keep using disproportionate. Actually, that's not right. Proportionality against the value of the military target. And I view my survival of my country very proportional. And what we would have done in the United States had an evil organization crossed our border, killed, raped, beheaded, taken hostages, we would have responded immediately with overwhelming force to include ensure not one rocket came out of enemy territory until you made the enemy recognize that they aren't going to win and that they're going to lose. That's how you win a war.
Well, hang on. Before I go to Medhi, I go to Medhi for response. I mean, Medhi articulated earlier the problem with that theory, which is after 9/11, which was the worst attack on American mainland since anyone could remember, that after that, they did launch a massive bombardment of Afghanistan. And where did that get America? Yep. In the end, it got America to a place where it left with its tail between its legs, with a load of people being killed on live television, horrific scenes, a betrayal of many people who had helped America during that war. And you cannot point to that and say there was any great victory. And this is the problem with what's going on in Gaza now. What does victory now look like? Because it's not going to lead to the removal of Hamas as an entity. And it looks like support for Hamas has grown, not deteriorated. So I don't understand what victory looks like other than...
That's not true. Support for Hamas in Gaza has dropped significantly. It's like low double digits, high single digits, which is wild. I mean, they're just fed up of the conditions, but it's not true that their support has grown. It's possible their support has grown globally, but not domestically.
What Smotrich has been saying, which is actually what it looks like, is all the Palestinians gone. That Israel go in, clear them out, and they take over the land. Well, that, I'm afraid, whether you like it or not, John, is actually one of the definitions of a genocide, the expulsion of a people based on its ethnicity. Medhi, your response.
So, yeah, a lot's been said there. Thank you for coming back to me.
I'll also acknowledge this is kind of like a 2v1, right? Like Piers just kind of hit John, and now he's giving it to Medhi. And John's not even a great debater, and this is such an indefensible position. So it's like John would need to be a much better debater than Medhi just to hold his own. It's just it's a much harder position to defend. So 2-on-1 against not the best debater, it's a mismatch. Let's be honest about that. But honestly, I'm happy about this mismatch because John deserves to be publicly shamed for all the propaganda he spread. Propaganda about like real people being killed.
First of all, let me just deal with this credentials game that I know John and his friend Douglas Murray love to play these days about military, who knows more about this or that. John runs his mouth on a variety of topics. I've seen him talk about, in fact, just today, he's talked about war crimes, international law, who's breaking international law. Last time I checked, John is not a lawyer. The International Criminal Court has indicted Netanyahu and Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The former Jewish president of the Tribunal for Yugoslavia and Rwanda says Netanyahu should be indicted for war crimes and crimes against humanity. So let's just, we're going to play the expert game. John's not an expert on genocide. The actual genocide experts, the president of the International Association of Genocide Scholars says Gaza is a genocide. The leading Israeli scholars of the Holocaust, Omar Bartov-Brown, Amos Goldberg at Hebrew University, say Gaza is a genocide. John's not an expert on targeting terrorists. The guy who led the attack on ISIS, the American Master Sergeant Wes Bryant, has said John doesn't know what he's talking about. So let's not play these credentials games because John will lose, just like Douglas did on the Rogan show. Let's talk about substance. John said a year ago, we're close to winning. He talked about not being allowed into Rafah. Rafah has been destroyed. Have you looked at any pictures recently? It's flattened. You don't need to go there with the IDF to see that they flattened Rafah. They flattened most of Gaza, and they still have not won, quote unquote. It's absurd to say that Israel was held back. Is this the new stab in the back? This is the new bullshit defense. The former Israeli ambassador to the United States said recently, thank God Joe Biden was president while this was going on. He gave us everything we wanted. He never asked us to stop. He never asked for a ceasefire. America gave Israel everything it wanted, and they went ahead and decided to, you talk about killing Hamas commanders, they dropped two 2,000-pound bombs on October the 31st, 2023, on the Jabalia refugee camp, killing over 100 people to kill one guy, Ibrahim Biari, who wasn't even there, a Hamas commander. They killed over 100 people with two 2,000-pound bombs, which incinerate everyone within 100.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even need to do the commentary. Honestly, Medhi's doing a great job. He's pretty much bringing up every point that I've said in my commentary. Okay, we could end this.
100 square feet and damage everyone within 1,000 square feet. That is not targeted welfare. That is not proportionate. That is not legal. And we've seen that play out now over 20 months. And as you said at the start of the show, as I said, the dam is breaking. The Spanish Prime Minister has said Israel is a genocidal state. The Brits, the French, the Canadians that have backed everything Israel done. Britain continues to arm Israel and saying this is intolerable. Donald Trump, as you said, Piers, wants this done, wants this over, isn't a fan of Netanyahu. Not that I have any trust in Trump to do any of the right thing. And I think the reality is, look, everyone can see with their own eyes. There's no justification ever for starving people. Since March the 2nd, to not allow baby formula and diapers in, only a sociopath would support that. And John's very smart, he's very eloquent, he comes on here, talks with stats, cites law. Back in Israel, the Israeli politicians and the Israeli journalists are saying openly genocidal things. They are saying everyone in Gaza is our enemy. They are saying we're going to get rid of everyone from Gaza. They are saying Gazan babies are not innocent. That's what they say on Israeli television, if anyone bothers to.
Right. That's a very good point, that you have like these Western propagandists who have little skin in the game, right? John's not Jewish, he's not Israeli. What his interest in just blindly defending Israel is, I don't know. But while he's trying to convince the world that what Israel's doing okay, all you need to do is see how Israeli politicians and Israeli media is talking about it to understand that there's zero regard for civilian life. I mean, I'm embarrassed to talk about this, and I do see our guy Yaakov Mishka in the comment section saying how Arab society is XYZ and whatever. I mean, I'm embarrassed to share this stat, but like a poll came out the other day saying, what is it, around 50-60% of Israelis are okay with genociding, not ethnic cleansing, genociding Palestinians. Now, here's the thing. I'm not about demonizing populations. We're all products of our environment. If you poll Palestinians on how they feel about Israel, you'd probably get similar numbers. Who doesn't want, people generally want to destroy their enemy. We've really been pushed to the brink. So this isn't to demonize the Israeli population, but like while John is out there saying, yeah, they're doing everything in their power, they don't want to harm civilians. If you look how Israel's talking about it, they're not talking the way John's talking. Not even close. Not even close.
To watch.
Yeah, and actually, John, there was a piece in the Jewish News in the UK published yesterday, which was without a doubt the most critical piece I have read by a mainstream Jewish newspaper in this country ever. And it was very critical of the Israeli government and its strategy. So I think this idea that what they're doing, the government has widespread support now from Israelis or Jewish people globally, I think is actually beginning to be proven wrong. I think there's a lot of uprisings now of people saying enough, because they can see there's no end game. No one really on the Israeli government side has explained what is going to happen when this war ends, or indeed what victory looks like. And I just don't understand it. I mean, look, you're a war expert. If you don't have a victory, what happens?
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, there is a shift even in Israeli society. So I said how the majority of Jewish Israelis would support genocide, but just so you know, the majority of Israelis support ending the war. So it seems contradictory, but it's not. One is like a hypothetical. They're like, do you think, like, would you get behind a plan to genocide Palestinians? Like, sure, but they know practically speaking that's not relevant. So most Israelis are tired of the war and they want to get the hostages back and stop having their soldiers be killed. And you do have like this increased anti-war movement. Like there's been a large anti-war movement, but it wasn't an anti-war movement saying we can't keep killing Palestinian children. It's more so let's get the hostages home. Let's stop sending our soldiers to die. But now we're seeing a growing number of Israelis that A, are calling it a genocide, and B, are literally holding up pictures at protests of dead Palestinian children. Now, this is still a minority, but there is this increase. And we are seeing this also around the world, more and more supporters of Israel saying enough is enough. So that's kind of cool to see.
So you have continued war. So this is, I mean, there's a lot there that Medhi talked about. And if you have to quote a master sergeant as your expert, as you're trying to say that I'm not an expert, or the other people that you list, while you're saying I'm not an expert,
he's the guy who literally led the effort to kill ISIS.
Yeah.
But okay.
Don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you, but you're not an expert. Fine. I'm not an expert. Fine. But history, military tactics, you say, Piers, what does victory look like?
Yeah.
Exactly the standards. Every hostage brought home. Hamas not in power, both military or political power in Gaza. And there's something else. Now you have actual, great quote, Israeli press.
Okay, so again, this is just showing he's not grounded in reality. Those are two contradictory things. Saying bringing every hostage home and defeating Hamas, that's contradictory. We have gotten 7 hostages released through military operations, and what is it, over 100 now through negotiations. And we've killed dozens through airstrikes and through trying to rescue them. So this whole idea that you could both defeat Hamas and get hostages back, is it possible? Sure, but I mean that's not grounded in reality. These are two completely contradictory goals. And what it looks like to defeat Hamas, it's unclear if that's possible or how many years it would take. You know, again, it took the U.S., the most powerful military in the world, fought the Taliban for 20 years and had very little to show for. So it's unclear what defeating Hamas looks like. And but there is a clear way to get the hostage back, very clear way. And these goals are contradictory.
In the Korean War, 54,000 civilians a month.
Bad guys, I forgot to bring it back up. Hold on.
Not expert, fine, but history, military tactics, you say, Piers, what does victory look like?
Yeah.
Exactly the standards. Every hostage brought home. Hamas not in power, both military or political power in Gaza. And there's something else. Now you have actual, great quote, Israeli press. That's the beauty of a free press. People can say what they want and get it published. You have people voting with their feet in Gaza right now saying, Hamas, we don't want Hamas. What you have, what victory looks like. Now I can tell you historically what it has ever looked like and what did it take to defeat another military. Take the Korean War. 2 million civilians died in the Korean War. 54,000 civilians a month for every month of that war. Do we call that a genocide? Do we call it illegal? No. Israel does follow the law of war and go.
Okay, I mean, the Korean War, which I have not studied, I know it was very bad, but that was like 80 years ago. We've made so much progress in terms of defining international law and morality. He's describing a time when you still had segregation in the United States and where slavery was still legal in some parts of the world. Like, why are you trying to apply the standards of the 1950s to the 2020s? It's just, that's not an argument.
Goes way beyond the legal obligations, like feeding the enemy's population, because as of right now,
like imagine supporting a segregated system and be like, yeah, what do you mean? America, they had segregation until the 60s. It's just not, okay, cool. So what?
Trucks are rolling in, even though they've tried to figure out a plan to get the food away from Hamas. And again, point the finger at Hamas, point the Medhi, control yourself. Open the gate to Egypt, create the biggest displaced person camp just on the other side of the gate and get the women, the children, and the elderly out of harm's way, and then destroy Hamas. That's victory so that it never threatens Israel again.
Wait, so why hasn't Israel done that? We've literally been at this for like 19 months. You're laying out a plan. Why hasn't Israel done it? And why have you not once criticized Israel's approach?
Go to Sir Andrew Roberts on the history of when you start a war, when you lose a war, you actually do lose the right to govern your population. You do lose the right to subjugate your population because the billionaires in Qatar don't care how many people in Gaza are dying.
Okay, Medhi, final word to you.
I mean, look, we can argue about what victory looks like. We can also argue that a victory shouldn't involve a genocide, right? That's been my consistent position from the beginning. Don't kill civilians. Don't intentionally harm civilians. When the former head of the Israeli military, the former Israeli defense minister, not some lefty, not some anti-Semite, Moshe Yaalon says last week, we're doing ethnic cleansing. We're sending our soldiers to commit war crimes. We're losing touch with our Jewish values. That's what Moshe Yaalon, a hawk, the former head of the Israeli military, said last week. There's a reason he's saying that, and there's a reason John Spencer doesn't want to engage with that, because Israeli generals are saying it themselves. We've turned killing kids into a hobby. The world can see. I thought we're not interrupting, John. The world can see what Israel is doing. Israeli generals can see. And by the way, one last point, please don't go and invoke Yemen to score your points. I think I've spoken and written more about Yemen than you ever have. People like you only ever come alongside Yemen and Sudan to defend Israel. You don't actually give a shit about the people of Yemen and Sudan. Show me how many things you've written about Yemen and Sudan versus what I've written about Yemen and Sudan.
Okay.
I actually don't give a shit about you. I care about civilians.
Oh,
Ooh, okay. I've never seen John getting feisty. I guess he understands this didn't go well for him.
Control yourself, John.
Thank you, gentlemen. We nearly got there without going ad hominem, but we fell at the final hurdle. But it was an interesting debate. Thank you both very much.
Oh man. Okay. Well, that was cool. Yeah. Good. I mean, John got destroyed. I'm interested. Normally, like who you think won a debate is dependent on which side you support. So I do imagine. Well, I wonder what like the pro-Israel camp feels about this debate. If they think John did well, maybe some viewers, be honest. Do you think John did well? Do you think he won that debate? And again, I agree it was a mismatch. It was kind of 2v1. It's a much harder position to defend, but that did not go well for him at all. Not at all. Anyways, okay, that was fun. Let's, I guess we could do some Q&A, answer some questions. We'll go maybe another 15 minutes and then we'll wrap this one up. Let's see. I see that there's some comments. So Emperor Gidara says, the majority of the anti-war Israelis seem to not care about the Gazans being killed, which is saddening. I've only seen very few call it genocide. Yeah, it's that's true. And look, I just want to be clear about something. My approach to activism, it's we should be humanizing people and criticizing and even demonizing institutions. It is sad to see the state of Israeli society currently, but this is what happens to society that's been in conflict for 100 years, right? Both the Israeli and Palestinian society are very extreme, but that's to be expected. And there's no real solution that comes from demonizing the society. When you demonize a society, it allows you to justify harming them. If you want to change a society that you think is flawed or misguided, you need to change their environmental conditions. Their institutions, the institutions are what determine the environmental conditions. So the difference between you and a human you hate is that you were born in your shoes and not in their shoes. And I think this is just a very important fundamental truth to accept. But again, institutions define environments, so we need to work to change institutions, whether that's government, military, schools, court, media, right? This is what we need to focus on changing. It is interesting how both sides will say the other side needs to be de-radicalized. We can never have peace until there's de-radicalization. I think they both have a case there, right? Because both sides are really radical. I suspect that if there's a just agreement, and once you have relative calm for some time, the radicalization is going to shift significantly, but it will probably also need to come with a shift in education and some kind of reconciliation program. But some people suggest doing something similar to what was done to like Nazis after World War II, which was like mass jailing of like hundreds of thousands of German soldiers were put in like labor camps and re-education camps. Like I don't think that's what it needs to come to. I really don't. I think there's much more humane ways to de-radicalize populations. Again, maybe in the 40s we didn't know a better way to do it, but in the world we live in today, there's humane ways to de-radicalize, and we'll need to find a way to do that. But I think if you find a just solution, that gets you halfway there in terms of de-radicalization. John's arguments are weak even among Israel supporters, Abdul Karim says. Yeah, I think there's people who would have done a better job than John. Emperor Gidara, I think someone like Natasha Huddorf would have done better than Spencer. Yeah, she's popping up lately. She's kind of like this. She's kind of like Douglas Murray. She has like this British accent that makes what she says sound sophisticated. And she's all about law, right? She's like a lawyer, and she gives a legal opinion on everything Israel's doing and makes it seem like it's completely in line with international law. But she's not a lawyer that is looking at this objectively. Her father's Israeli. She very likely got into international law in order to defend Israel. She's not looking at this objectively. And I've heard, that's definitely not my specialty, law and international law, but I've seen some counters explaining how like her interpretation of law is just complete bullshit. Abdul Karim Pasha says, have you sent your offer to debate Professor Louis Stone? He wrote a piece casting doubt on MOH data. The report wasn't convincing me, but it's clear he's more statistically competent than Spencer. No, I've actually never heard of Louis Stone. Can you send me his thing? Because maybe I'll just do a debunking on it if he's not down to debate. But let's do it. Maybe we finally found somebody to debate the death toll. And how have I never heard of him? Okay. Yeah, Emperor Gidara says she, meaning Natasha, works backwards from her conclusions. Exactly. She's not saying, okay, let me take this situation and try to, in an honest and objective way, interpret international law. They're saying, how can I interpret international law in a way that Israel will be right? It's very clear that that's how she's approaching this. I agree with you completely. Today, somebody brought to my attention that they sent Vegan Gains. You all know Vegan Gains? He's like a vegan streamer, but does commentary and other things. I used to watch his content back in the day. Always found it informative and entertaining. I didn't realize he's super pro-war, which is interesting because veganism is about compassion. But somebody sent him some of my content and said, you should debate Adar. And he just straight up trashed me, called me a cuck. And it was very clear in like this 1 minute of him trashing me that I had no idea what he's talking about. But I'm not going to do a review of that video. I sent him a nice email offering to see if he does want to do a public conversation, and if not, a private conversation, so I could actually talk to him about the issue that he seems to have no idea what he's talking about. But we'll see. So we'll see if he agrees to debate, and if not, then I will do a review of what he said about me and explain why he literally has no idea what he's talking about. Like none. Just the two things he said was just complete bullshit with zero basis whatsoever. Okay, let's see if there's any. Fahed, good to see you here. How are you, man? Hey, Yaakov Mishka, are you still here? Are you still watching? Emperor Ghidorah says, has there been proven case of Hamas combatant pretending to be a journalist? So I haven't researched this like really deeply, but I think there has been some evidence presented that some journalists are also part of Hamas, but they could just be like Hamas journalists the same way you have like IDF reporters. That's unclear, but it wouldn't surprise me if at least some journalists have some kind of like a dual job. But again, you've had, what is it, like nearly 200 journalists killed? Is it just that they were 200 seems pretty statistically significant that it's not all by mistake, but it's intentionality is very hard to speculate on, it's very hard to speculate on if that was intentional. Okay, Emperor Ghidorah, you're the one who you're the one who mentioned vegan gains. Cool. Well, thanks for doing that. And I appreciate you doing like a super chat just to get that message across. He doesn't deserve it, but I appreciate that. So you say that was me. He's super uber mega pro Israel. You can trash talk him, his ex-wife, veganism, and he'll be fine with it. But if you criticize Israel, he'll ban you. Interesting. So why is that? Is he Jewish? Does he have Israeli connection? Where does this come from? Like where does his deep bias come from? And it's interesting that somebody like who shows compassion for animals literally is supporting one of the deadliest, again, the deadliest in terms of deadliest proportion to population size in the 21st century. But I would say based on what he said in his clip, he doesn't think it's the deadliest. He's buying into this John Spencer, Andrew Fox, Eisenberg propaganda, thinking that it's not deadly at all. Emperor continues to say he banned him from his chat for saying Israel occupies land, and he banned me. He also has pretty much no sympathy for Palestinians. Yeah, that's so weird. Okay, well, I hope he gets back to my email, and I'm super down for a public debate with him. He's a solid debater too. Like that'd be a good one, but it'd just be a mismatch in terms of like knowledge, right? I don't think I'm a better debater than him innately. Like I would say I'm probably like in maybe slightly above average debater, but it's like there's such a gap of knowledge here. It's I don't think he'd be comfortable doing that. Emperor Ghidorah says, did you check the second clip I sent you? No. Oh, did you send me another clip? No, I didn't. You want to send it here? We could review it together. Happy to bring it on. It's so funny. He called me a cuck and a pick-me. A cuck and a pick-me. Yeah, send it. Let's watch it. Like, right, I like in terms of like gaps of knowledge, right? Like, first of all, I think veganism, which I was vegan for some time, but I got way too thin. Just wasn't good for me. And again, he would make the case that there's a very good way to do it healthy, et cetera, et cetera. I just didn't successfully do it. But like one of the easiest cases to make in debates is the vegan debate. Like the idea that we can just exploit and torture animals for pleasure, right? It's the majority of the animal products we eat are not for health; it's for pleasure. And even if you want to make the case, all right, check this out. Even if you want to make the case, you need some animal products for health. The majority of what we eat is often not what we eat. Like mayo. Mayo's not a health food. Mayo literally comes from a chicken that was tortured its entire life, that never got to spread its wings or see the light of day. Right? The vegan taking the vegan side in a debate is very easy. So I feel that the anti-war side is just about as easy as the vegan side here, I would say. And then with the gap of knowledge, like I could understand why he wouldn't want to do this, but let's see. Send the replies on X. I don't know how to send it here on YouTube. Well, so give me some context. I could try to find it. Let's see. Twitter's been bugging out a lot today. I don't remember what you posted on. Which post was it on? And remind me your handle again on Twitter. It might take me some time to find this. Or if you're on Discord, you could send it to me on Discord. Yeah, Ghidorah, give me some more context, and I'll try to pull it up. We could pull it up and review it. I'll post it on the head on Discord. Okay, cool. Or you could send it to me directly. But yeah, let's do that. Oh, and by the way, there's a conversation happening right now on the head on Discord while I'm doing this live stream. We have like 10 people, Israelis, Palestinians, and people all over the world in a conversation in Discord chat. So let me drop a link. Let's drop a link to that if anybody wants to join. Boom. Okay, just dropped it in chat. Cool. By the way, what do y'all think of the shirt? It's in Arabic and Hebrew. This is actually, I imagine, this looks very Arabic. This looks Hebrew. Can an Arab speaker tell me if this says something in Arabic? Because in Hebrew it says zazim, which is moving to peace, towards peace. And then I guess this is le shalom, to peace in Arabic. This is in Hebrew. But this looks like they combined it. So maybe an Arab speaker can tell me what this says. Wait, no. This is this is the clip where he was trashing me, where he called me a cuck and then spread the misinformation about the MOH and the ceasefire. Yeah, that one. I did see that one, and then I emailed him about it. I titled the email, "I saw you called me a cuck." But so that was the one clip I saw. Is there another clip that I meant to see? I'm kind of resistant to pull it up now and give commentary on it because I want to wait to see if he gets back to me, if he's down for a public discussion. If not, then I will dedicate an episode towards calling him out on his bullshit, which I might as well just review more clips of his. So, Emperor, if you have more stuff that he said, This is if he does not agree to a public or private conversation. I will do an episode calling him out for being a fraud. So send me everything you have on him, and then I'll review it and do a debunking. But I'm not. I won't review this just now for that reason. Because I want to keep it. Wait, hold on. Is this the same one? Oh no, it's not the same one. Okay, cool. Let's do this. Oh, whatever. This might also be relevant for then, but so you said go to 341.12. He's watching some Alex O'Connor. I really like Alex O'Connor. I've been actually watching O'Connor since, I don't watch anybody religiously, but O'Connor, I was actually familiar with his content when he had like 20K subs. It's cool to see him get the attention he deserves. Okay. He has some. Oh, so you're saying he trashed me? He trashed me more than once. Ah, okay. 341.12. Let's see.
Debate this guy, bro. Apparently, he'll debate anyone. He says he's former IDF, BTW.
Yeah. This guy is probably just a cucked retard,
So
self-hating
the question I often
Jew.
get asked is, whose side are you really on, Israel or Palestine? Let me explain. The lens in which I view this conflict, and all politics in general, is one of universal humanism. That is the idea that all humans have intrinsic value and all humans deserve the right to life. Now, when looking at things through this lens, it'll cause me to criticize both sides when they're doing something anti-humanist, and also cause me to speak for the rights of both sides, because both sides are in fact human. And if I'm going to be completely honest, this doesn't come so naturally to me. As a Jewish Israeli, I naturally have a closer connection to my own. But I recognize that this is not a good framework to build a beautiful world for all people. So I take a step back.
Yay. Yeah, this guy's just a cuck bitch. The irony of calling Palestinians Nazis while saying this. When the last hostages are out, Gaza must be emptied and flattened. All of it, don't care where the people there go, as long as it isn't Israel or America. There's a sick society. They're Nazis, all of them should be treated accordingly. They have to leave. I mean, these are the same people who were cheering when October 7th happened. Who the fuck is this guy? MBA Tel Aviv University.
Okay, let's just do. Okay, this is hilarious. That's a good first clip he landed on, because that's actually an intimidating clip. It's much easier to debate somebody who's like very traditionally either pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, because you know their arguments. But somebody who like approaches this from a place of universal humanism, their arguments are different than the traditional ones, so it's harder to prepare for them. So actually, this clip that he just called the cuck bitch is maybe one of the reasons why he's intimidated to debate. Okay. I'm a cuck bitch, but it looks like he's a pussy. But let's see. I sent him a nice email.
So he's a nobody.
I am honored to have Andre X on the program today. Andre has been doing some very important in the West Bank. And this work he's done has actually caused him.
And it took me a while to figure out what's happening, because my work up until then had been focused on the post-Soviet space.
I'm going to speed it up.
This guy who thinks I should be charged with war crimes for serving the IDF shared a clip of me 4 years ago. Humanizing Norman Finkelstein. This seems to be the type of clip that would be more likely to trigger a right-wing Zionist than radical anti-Zionist. Perhaps there's more proof of the horseshoe theory. This guy is a fucking fan of Finkelstein.
Omri Greenspan, civilian combatant. Fan of Finkelstein, I'm not. I think that's a mischaracterization, but I find the guy very humorous. I think he's a mega troll, and I appreciate his approach and intellect. Do I agree with everything he says? Obviously not, but yeah, I think generally I like the guy. Yeah. Ratio is the best in modern warfare. It absolutely is not. This is just propaganda. It's the civilian to combatant ratio. We can't know. We don't really have any way of knowing, but it's probably around somewhere 8-1, 9-1. You want to be charitable, you could say 7 or 6-1. For people to think that is normal or okay, it's just not. And
even if we go by the figures that he's proposing, that is still quite good. That's better than most other countries have done.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. This is run-of-the-mill propaganda. 9-1 is a myth that's been debunked. It's around 1.5 to 2-1 is urban warfare, the average of urban warfare. Gaza, and I think my range is a little different today. Today, I'd say Gaza at the very minimum is 4-1, all the way up to 9-1. I think probably 7-8, 6-8 maybe is like a good guess, but I broaden the range because we really can't know. Saying 9-1 is 8-1 is better than most. I challenge all of you to find me a single conflict that has an 8-1 civilian to combatant ratio. You could find genocides that have that. You're not finding conflict with that.
If you look at like America in the Vietnam War, that's better than Vietnam. That's better than the Iraq War.
No, it's not. Actually, Vietnam I haven't researched. It's not better than the Iraq War. Iraq War is probably around 5-1. That's 5-1, but that's if you include indirect deaths. Most civilian combatant ratios do not include indirect deaths. They include just direct deaths. In Iraq, hundreds of thousands died from the collapse of the healthcare system. If you include them, you're at around 5-1, not 8-1. And 5-1 is unprecedented, but that does include indirect deaths. I mean, this is just complete bullshit.
That may even be better than Afghanistan. So
no, it's not. Oh my God, he has no idea what he's talking about. I can understand why he wouldn't debate me. I'm sorry. Like again, I'm not some expert debater. Vegan gains would get absolutely destroyed. Absolutely destroyed.
Is this guy so insane that he's actually claiming the case for genocide is plausible?
And who set the standard of what the civilian to combatant ratio should be? The United States, who the only thing they've really set the standard for is what war crimes in urban combat warfare look like. So the fact that the fact that the U.S. with all their war crimes get to set this standard, and Israel's not doing 10-1, which actually they might be doing 10-1, so it's okay. No, if we look at the numbers, okay, we don't know the civilian to combatant ratio. We can't know. But when we look at the amount of civilians that were killed, you have a higher percentage of civilians killed proportionate to population size than you had in Iraq, than you had in Syria, than you have in Syria. Yep.
Yeah, it's more. So one, Hamas deliberately tries to increase the amount of civilians that are.
No, there's no evidence for that. That's just another propaganda claim. You could say Hamas has a callous indifference towards civilians being killed, trying to maximize it. That's, again, never been proven. There's no real evidence for that.
Killed. Just like look what they did before October 7th. They didn't warn anybody in Gaza that they were going to do this. They
didn't warn anybody. You can't if you're going to launch a surprise attack, you can't warn your people. Bro, don't be retarded.
Didn't create any fucking bomb shelters or anywhere for civilians to go for safety. All they did was make this fucking tunnel network that goes under hospital.
Yep, exactly. Callous indifference because they want to have as much of an advantage as possible. The best way to have an advantage is for them to have massive military infrastructure under Gaza. Should they let civilians in tunnels? Obviously, yeah, for sure. But their priority is not to protect civilians. It's to try to be able to challenge Israel. But not prioritizing civilians is not the same as trying to maximize their death. There's been no evidence of them doing that.
Hospitals and schools and horseshit. They set up like rocket batteries and shit on people's houses. They deliberately try to increase the amount of.
So rocket batteries on houses, again, generally speaking, based on what we know, the rockets, sometimes they do come from populated areas. Sometimes they come from behind trees. But often if they're using civilian infrastructure for military purposes, it's often after it's evacuated, not while it's evacuated. And the reason's simple. The people living there are not going to be like, yeah, sure, shoot a rocket from this house. Yeah, like let my children be killed. That's not how it works. And again, that has not been demonstrated. You have so much you have so much surveillance. You have drone footage. You have GoPros on the soldiers. Any claim that's made without video evidence should be taken with a grain of salt.
Fucking civilian casualties. and it's one of the most densely populated places on Earth. So, like, you can't just say this is an apples to apples comparison.
Then you have in Russia, Ukraine. Even if we want to look at specific cities like Aleppo, which was widely considered to be a humanitarian disaster, Gaza is more deadly than Aleppo. And the difference is NATO considered invading.
That sounds like a very dubious claim.
It's not a dubious claim, my guy. You could look it up. Nothing dubious about it. Look it up. Higher civilian to combat ratio, higher rate of children being killed. And yeah, Aleppo was a humanitarian crisis that was also very densely populated.
Extremely dubious. I'm pretty sure he's totally wrong about that.
Syria to topple Assad, while right now the West is supporting Israel in their operation in Gaza. George W. Bush.
Like, again, during the Syrian civil war, wasn't there, like, at minimum 350,000 civilian casualties?
Yeah, there were. It was around a 1-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio. A few more civilians than combatants, but close to 1-to-1. But proportion to population size, Gaza is significantly worse. Children are dying at a 40 times higher rate in Gaza than in Syria, if you account for total population size. Worlds apart. Worlds apart. Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, they're widely considered to be war criminals. Okay, so it's not like there's some huge double standard. People don't accept this 10-to-1 ratio. People don't accept these operations in cities, and Israel's not doing a better job. A minimum, and this is a low estimate, 1.5% of civilian Gazan population has been killed the past year. That's higher than any of these other conflicts. So this
again, Hamas deliberately tries to increase civilian casualties, and it's one of the most densely populated areas on Earth.
We're doing such a good job. No, that's bullshit. You know who's saying it? Propagandists, people like John Spencer who work for West Point, people like Joseph Cohen from the Israel Advocacy Network. These are the people saying it, not actually objective observers who are actually doing research. And anybody actually doing the research is reaching a very different conclusion. If you want to base your world,
I'll save his Twitter profile and I'll look into some of his content, and I might be willing to debate him depending on some of the stuff I find. If he's claiming there's a plausible case for genocide, then I might go out of my way to debate him. If he is just saying Israel has to do a better job of reducing civilian casualties, then I don't know if I'd really bother debating. Thanks for the donation, the fat fuck.
You said a second ago that the word.
Okay, so we thanks for sharing that. Wait, so Emperor, did you donate to? Was that you as well? You donated to him to get that up as well. So he says, if I say there's a plausible case for genocide, he would debate me. I would debate that. I mean, virtually every academic on genocide and human rights organization said it's a genocide. And does Vegan Gains know better than them? Likely not. I mean, we saw how little he actually knows about the conflict. So if he wants to debate that, that's fine. There's a whole boatload of literature written making the case for genocide. And the case for not genocide, you'd need to read like John Spencer's blog post to find that. So yeah, we could yeah, Vegan Gains. I'll take that side of the debate, but I'm more interested in setting the record straight on the civilian to combatant ratio, on how Hamas uses infrastructure. And again, they definitely, it's a very, what he's right about is that it's not apples to apples. I said this earlier. The situation in Gaza is significantly more challenging than any other form of urban warfare. Hamas had decades to prepare for this. That doesn't absolve Israel of their responsibility. But when I make the case about it being worse, a lot of that is a counter to people lying and saying it's not as bad. Talking about why it's worse is a different argument. Let's first agree on the facts, right? So when people lie or spread misinformation saying 1-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio, that's wrong. So when I counter that and explain that it's significantly higher, if you then go say, yeah, but why? That's a different argument. So I'm happy to have both arguments, but let's first agree on the facts. And the fact is it's significantly worse. Significantly. Why? Let's talk about it. Let's debate. João Batista says he sounds like Destiny. They've also debated, interestingly. Yeah, Destiny also has never agreed to speak to me. I don't know why. Like, look, I get it. Like, on one hand, I'm just not a big name, so why give me the time? But you'd think that, like, with my experience being Israeli, former IDF, I'm not some, like, I don't want to say I don't hate Israel. There's parts of Israel certainly now I hate. It's hard for me to see that a country that I'm a citizen of and a military I served in commit one of the greatest atrocities of the 21st century. It does get me to hate that some of these institutions, but like the society here in many ways, even though we're so extreme, like people are surprised to hear this. Israelis are overwhelmingly, generally just good, kind people. unless you ask them about their enemy, right? If you judge somebody about how they feel about their enemy, you'll think they're evil. If you ask them how they feel about their loved ones, you'll think they're not so different from you. So again, I'm not some like hater. So you think that this, and again, do I perhaps think too highly of myself? Maybe. But you'd think that there's a certain appeal here that these people would be interested. But it also might be that this unique perspective, also relative to my size. So for example, you debate somebody with a big name, that gets a lot of viewing, so there's more incentive to do it. So it almost seems like somebody who you are intimidated to debate who's not a big name is the thing you would least want to do. You have very little to gain and a lot to lose. So I think I kind of fall into that category of like not such a big name relative to these guys, but in this specific space, quite knowledgeable. So maybe, yeah, maybe that's why. But back in the day, more people used to be willing to debate me. As of late, it's kind of, they've all run away. So open challenge to anybody, Destiny, Vegan Gains, anybody. Let's do this any day of the week, anytime, any place. Or again, I'll talk, debate, discuss anybody. If somebody wants to make the case that there's a low civilian to combatant ratio or a low death toll, or that the Ministry of Health is fudging the numbers, let's do it any day of the week. Okay. What's the percentage of people that support the war? There's been conflicting statements I've seen. Yeah, I've seen also conflicting statements, imagination scene. I don't know, I don't know. The last one I saw was like 77% don't support it. I did see one poll that the majority do support it. It seems like most polls are showing that the majority don't support it. Emperor Gidara, thanks so much for the $5 super chat. I bought into the Israeli propaganda, and watching your stuff helped me realize it was all bullshit. I thank you for what you do. Keep doing good work. Keep doing what you do, Adar. Thanks so much, Emperor, both for the $5 and those words of appreciation. That's why I do what I do, because I am trying to inform people, and when I hear that I have changed people's minds, it continues to motivate me to do this work. And my fellow Jews many of them are upset with me. They feel like I'm demonizing Israel and I'm not being supportive enough. But I think that, and I tell them this, I said, it is better that those who dislike Israel are going to hear about Israel from somebody who doesn't want to see Israel destroyed, right? Like my approach to Israel. And again, I'm saying that I have a bias here, but I like to think my approach to Israel is good faith. I'm not saying this because I want to see Israel destroyed. I'm not saying this because I want to see harm done to the Jewish people. I mean, these are my family. My entire family lives in Israel. They rely on Israel for their protection. So I think it's better if the critique of Israel is done by people who actually care, right? Anyways, thanks again for the $5. If anybody else wants to toss a super chat, that'd be cool. Imagination says, what's your views on someone like Yaakov Shapiro and his book, The Empty Wagon? I've been thinking of buying. So Yaakov Shapiro, that's the anti-Zionist rabbi, right? Somebody keeps asking me to have them on, and honestly, I should. They said they reached out and Yaakov's down. I don't know the book, but we should get Yaakov on. So yeah, I'll speak to him. So yeah, I'm not sure. I can't tell you about the book, but maybe we'll have Yaakov on sometime in the next few weeks. I'll make a note to reach out to him. Coolio. Okay, I think maybe with that we will wrap this up. I'll try to do another stream next week, whether you're watching this on Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. This was fun. Maybe next week we'll have a little debate with Vegan Gains, but regardless, we'll be doing something here. Imagination Scenes, do you have any book suggestions before you end stream? So you want to hear an almost embarrassing confession? I don't even know if it's embarrassing or if I should take pride in this. I've never read a full book on Israel-Palestine. I've researched it. Like I read articles and analyses and reports from human rights groups, and I've thoroughly read many of the Wikipedia pages, and I look at the sources to the Wikipedia pages. So it's not that I haven't done the research, but I've actually never sat down and read a full book on Israel Palestine. But my partner, my co-founder at Headon.ai has read almost all the books. Actually, he just called me. Let's call him while on stream. Hold on. Can you all hear that ring? Let's find out. He says there's drama on Discord and he's asking if I'm on top of it, but no, I'm not on top of it because I'm hearing that thing. Let's see the answers. He's very well read on the conflict. Good seeing you, Emperor. Thanks for helping make this chat entertaining with some content and the super chat. I hope to see you next week. Okay, it looks like he's not answering me. We'll give it one more ring. Well, that's an anticlimactic way to end the stream. Now I can almost feel like I need to do something exciting to kind of end it on a high note. I feel like I got nothing, though. It's Friday night. It's getting late. Imagination Scene says, I only managed getting through a few chapters of Righteous Victims by Benny Morris because I had issues with his framing. Do you want to share what, maybe? Like I've definitely looked into Benny Morris's work. I debated Joseph Cohn years ago of if the Nakba was ethnic cleansing, and so I did a deep dive into Benny Morris at the time. Yeah. So what framing didn't you like? He is one of the most respected historians on Israel Palestine. Okay. I think we'll wrap this one up. Oh, interesting. So imagination is many things, starting off with Mark Twain using the empty land rhetoric. One fact he just misquoted much more. Oh, interesting. So I know Benny Morris had a little bit of a character arc. I think he started off more right wing and then he got more left wing, and then in his older years got more right wing. So was this his first book when he was still in his right wing phase? I mean, the Mark Twain quote is just irrelevant. You have data, you have numbers. We know there were villages, we know there were cities. This isn't up for debate. If you want to be a propagandist, you could use a Mark Twain quote. If you're a serious commentator, analyst, then you look at the data we have in the time of population. It's such a silly way to make an argument. But for those who don't know, Mark Twain quote about Palestine. (1867). So this was right before the start of the Zionist movement. I should have asked ChatGPT this. Google us, so outdated. Takes so long. Okay, let's see. ChatGPT. What? That's funny. I'm like, ChatGPT's quicker, and then it crashed on me. Okay, cool. Then it sits abroad, 1869. A desolate country whose soil is rich enough, but is given over wholly to weeds. A silent, mournful expanse. A desolation is here that not even imagination can grace. With pomp of life and action, we never saw human being on the whole route. Hardly a tree or a shrub anywhere. Even the olive and the cactus, those fast friends of worthless soil, had almost deserted the country. It's interesting, I mean, I guess it depends what route he took through Palestine at the time. But I mean, Palestine, whether Ottoman Palestine or prior, was continuously occupied. You had a presence in Jerusalem, in Haifa, in Safed, and Yaffo. I mean, these are cities that are hundreds or thousands of years old. So what's he talking about? Yeah, I mean, if you go through like the middle of the country and through the Negev, the desert, sure. But like the coastal areas, there's some mountaintops. You've had cities for millennia. So, you know, what is even? And again, I don't know the context of like that Mark Twain quote, but it's definitely used for pro-Israel propaganda. Yeah. CS Engineer goes, account name Free Palestine. What's that in reference to? What's that in reference to, my guy? I know I said bye and here we are because I didn't want to end it on an anticlimactic, not getting responded to on the phone. Mokiet says, have you seen Lonerbox? Looked at your channel about a month ago. No, I didn't. But I was on Lonerbox's stream a few months back. We chatted. He didn't give much. He gave like minimal pushback. And then when I got off, people like kept telling me that he says all these like things about casting doubt on the death toll, but he didn't challenge me on any of that. So I don't know. I'm not sure why. But we talk here and there. I find him to be a nice guy. I don't consume too much of his content, but like we had a good interaction. So what was? Can you send that to me? Is that recent? What did he look at? What did he review? Last we spoke was actually a few weeks ago, and he said, yeah, let's definitely do something again soon. The thing is, he says he's not talking about Israel-Palestine anymore, so I guess I just need to decide what we want to talk about. And maybe I'm just like a one-trick pony. Maybe that's the only thing I'm here to talk about. Although I like many other philosophical concepts. Like I'm down to talk about like free will and moral concepts and stuff like that. Different interesting moral questions are fun to ponder on, but like as of late I've really become like I don't have all too much commentary on US politics these days. Mokiet says he definitely does talk about Israel Palestine. Interesting. So is he also just doesn't want to talk to me about this? I've like been blacklisted. Nobody wants to talk to me about Israel Palestine. I mean, I'm down to talk U.S. politics. I have a few things to say about Trump. Interesting guy, huh? Interesting fellow, that Trump. You know, I didn't vote for him. I don't vote for either of the two parties. I'm not registered to vote in a swing state. I vote third party just as a protest vote. But when he got elected, I was maybe, let's say, optimistic. I said, you know what? He's doing this for his legacy. He's not beholden to the party. So he's going to try to get some big wins. Those big wins can be good for humanity. That was my hope. And then I saw him doing all this like dumb shit like Canada and Greenland and Gulf of America. And these are like symbolic wins. Like it's very much for his legacy. It's like these things that he'll get remembered for that are like meaningless and unimportant, right? So he's going after like this irrelevant, just irrelevant stuff. And then when he started like jailing protesters and sending people to El Salvador in prison, I'm like, damn, this shit is bad. This is worse than I hoped. And look, jailing these Palestinian, like deporting these Palestinian protesters, first of all, fuels anti-Semitism. For us Jews to have this special status that you'll get deported, you protest against Israel and then you're called an anti-Semite and you get deported. That literally confirms this suspicion that Jews have all this power and they wield their power to silence people. And it kind of proves that, or it seems to prove that Trump is owned by Jews, right? Like this fuels anti-Semitism. It doesn't help it. And it also fuels the pro-Palestine movement, which might be a good thing, but like that's just an ineffective strategy. So in many ways, it was like he was doing all these symbolic bullshit stuff that's irrelevant. And then he was doing this horrible human rights abuses and, going against due process, deporting people, jailing people. But then like what he's trying to do in the Middle East, I mean, I think if he succeeds at that, I think there's hope. Like the fact that he's kind of like not being as loyal to Israel and trying to create this coalition of Gulf countries, and he's negotiating with Iran, and he did a deal with the Houthis. Like, I'm super supportive of all of this stuff. So credit where credit's due. I think so far what he's doing in the Middle East is good, but he needs to stop Netanyahu. Netanyahu is a madman who will ethnically cleanse Gaza if he has the chance, and I think only Trump can stop him. That's my commentary. So Mokiet says, why third party? You're nut. You're a nut. Mokiet, so I don't live in a swing state. My vote doesn't really matter. So why would it, like, I could stay at home. Now, the third state, there's some strategy there. If any third party gets over 5% of the vote, then they get national funding in the next election. So I normally vote for the third party that has the best chance of getting the 5%. They never do, but that's like how I vote. It's a strategic vote. Abdul Karim Pasha says Loanerbox has some controversial things about the Gaza conflict. Yeah, people keep saying this. I know, like, History Speaks, Matthew, who's become a friend of mine through doing different analyses together. We haven't published anything together, but we bounce things back and forth. We talk probably weekly at this point. He's always calling out Loanerbox on stuff. I don't know. I haven't watched enough of his content, but I'm definitely down to talk to him again. Yeah, Mokid. So I agree that the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, I wouldn't say it's Trump's idea. I think Netanyahu had a hope that he could accomplish this from day one. I think it's the only way he could, if he could successfully do this, it's the only way to turn his massive failure of October 7th into something positive. This is his last run to secure his legacy. So he needs a bold, massive victory. I think Trump just moved the Overton window in terms of it being acceptable to talk about. So that's true. Trump's rhetoric contributed tremendously. He made it okay to talk about it, but I don't think that plan came from him. And again, yeah, that's something very detestable that Trump did. Bisan Jasser, Bree Wu still doesn't want to debate. Yeah, okay, that's another one that refuses to debate me. Brianna Wu, she's interesting. Like, without being too mean, first of all, I just don't think she's so smart. She's kind of like low IQ. I don't know how people like that are popular. I can't figure it out. But her commentary on Israel-Palestine is so shallow. It's just so dumb. And I called her out this week. She said, it's objectively true that Gaza has the lowest civilian to combatant ratio in history, when in fact it's most likely the highest in the 21st century by far. Okay. And I pointed this out to her and I said, I'm down to debate you. And she said, no, I don't debate liars, because I'm lying about my estimate for the civilian to combatant ratio. I go, it's 4-to-1 to 9-to-1. She says 9-to-1, let's live in reality. What does she know? She's never analyzed it. She's listening to people like John Spencer. But she says I'm a liar for suggesting that, right? She didn't say, I think your analysis is wrong, let's talk about it. She said I'm lying. Now, interestingly, ratios are confusing. 4-to-1 is 80%. 9-to-1 is 90%. 4-to-1 to 9-to-1 is not a massive, it's not really as massive of a range as you'd think it is. She doesn't know this. This is not in her, she doesn't get that. And then I said, this actually went kind of viral. This got at like 3,000-4,000 likes, our little interaction. And then I said, fine, you know what? We don't need to debate. I'm down to have a call with you to just share with you the findings of my research. And she said, and look how manipulative this is. She goes, no means no, right? Kind of using that consent language as if I'm violating her boundaries. What do you mean no means no? I asked if you want to debate. She said no. So I offered you a phone call. That's not the same offer. Don't try to make it seem like I'm violating your boundaries, but with this no means no. But that shit went viral. I retweeted it and called her out. Also, Andrew Fox refuses to debate, called me, said I'm a liar, and said I only personally attack, which very clearly personal attacks is just not my MO. Once in a while I'll do it, but that's not how I build arguments. And then he blocked me. So no, Bree Wu still doesn't want to, and she likely never will. I mean, she can't. Like, that's not a fair matchup either. It really isn't. Abdul Karim Pasha says, when I started watching Loanerbox, I thought he was unbiased, but I think he shifted very pro-Israel. Interesting. Mokiet says, why would you want these nutcases to get funding? Because I think the two-party system is crap. I think it's just bullshit. So I'm trying to bring up third parties by any means necessary, and it's good. Let's have let's have a debate and more diversity. I want the Libertarian Party and the Green Party to be part of the discussion. Hell, let's get Cornel West in the mix, whatever party he ran for. Like we need not as many parties as we have here in Israel, but definitely more than two. Like, why is it that we get stuck with two horrible choices, a country of 350 million people, and every time it's like, who the fuck are these people? Why are these the best choices? Is this the best talent we have? Bro, talk about Aaron Bushnell, the airman. I hope you know him. Yeah, of course. Aaron Bushnell, the one who committed suicide by lighting himself on fire. I'm not sure what you'd like me to say about him. I mean, I think it's sad that he ended his life that way. Although, you know, he is somebody who might go down in history as a hero. Like that's the kind of act. There's an atrocity being committed, supported by the country, primarily supported by the country that he's a soldier in, and as an act of resistance, lights himself on fire. It's hard to, like, he might be remembered in history for that. I am not endorsing that. That's not Free Palestine. It ends your life, but can be seen as a heroic act. So it's interesting to see how he's going to be remembered. My channel says, what do you think are the problems with the Federation solution? Well, it's first of all just the reformation. It's just a completely new form of governance. It's unclear. You still have 50% Jews, 50% Palestinians. It's unclear if the Constitution and the system of checks and balances would be strong enough to ensure that one side can't dominate the other side. If you have different cantons, let's say you have a Jewish majority canton, but you have some Palestinians in there, might there be discrimination there? The canton might have, like, the local autonomy might give them power to discriminate. Again, although strong constitutions should stop that from happening. But again, it's like a complex system of governance that is governing two people that have now been in conflict for 100 years and have immense amounts of mistrust and hate with one another. A lot can go wrong. So while I often say I think a federation is a good idea, I think a lot can go wrong, and that it's probably riskier than something like a confederation. Mokiad says it's important to vote even in a non-swing state because popular vote have symbolic significance. Okay, yeah, I hear that case. Like, I hear that. Is that enough to convince me? I'll need to think about it. Does Bree Wu debate at all? Yes. So supposedly, I didn't watch it. She had a debate a few months ago with somebody, like she did a debate on Israel-Palestine. I don't know who's against, but I wonder how that went. I mean, because it's hard for me to see her like being a good debater on this. She doesn't really know what she's talking about. Okay, Yaakov Mishke says most inmates in prisons are 47%. So you're saying like Israeli Arabs are in prison at a 2.3 times rate of their population size, meaning they're more likely to commit crime. First of all, I don't know if that stat is true. It might be. How do we explain that? You know, I wonder what you think the explanation of that is. But first of all, if we correct for socioeconomics, we might no longer be 2x their population size, right? Once you connect for socioeconomics, we might now be 1.5x their population, maybe even less, right? So we need to correct for socioeconomics. Also, there's much less trust in institutions and in police in the Palestinian citizen of Israel community. So when you don't have trust in institutions, people take the law into their own hands. You have clans fighting. You don't always go to the police to solve things, right? So there's cultural and societal explanations for this. I don't know what you're suggesting. The fact that they're now committing more crime means we need to change the institutions to help reduce that. What are you suggesting, that we deport them? Because actually, I'll wait for your response. What do you think we should do about it? Emperor Ghidorah says, everyone seems to be scared to debate. Yeah, I don't know why. Why is everybody saying, tell me something about Aaron Bush now? Oh, maybe this was before I did. Okay. Okay, so Yaakov Mishka says, most bad aspects of Israeli society is from the Arabs. Brother, there was a poll that came out this week showing half of Jewish Israelis support genocide. You have no high ground. And I imagine you're probably one of those. What do you think should be done with Palestinians? Let's start there, and then we'll see if you're in a position to say bad aspects of Israeli society. Let's see, buddy. The two-state system is not compatible with first-pass system. What's first-pass system? Multi-party system is not compatible with first-pass. I actually don't know what this is, Mo Kid. It's either two states, genocide, ethnic cleansing, everything else is delusional. I think you could do a federation. I wouldn't agree with that. I think you got 3 of the 4 options. I think a federation is another one. But I would agree, like 2 states is more straightforward, more simple. It does come with its own challenges. Oh, so CS Engineer, you said, I saw what you said on Instagram. Yeah, I actually saw you sent me a message. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. I'll reply, but I did see that. And I appreciate the shout out. Imagination Scene says, what happens with the software project you're doing? So still doing that. Yeah, we're building headon.ai. It's a platform designed for people with opposing viewpoints. We're building AI tools to help people find common ground. We're actively building that. We have this awesome Discord community. Eventually, we'll migrate the community to the Head-On platform, but for now, we're building it on Discord. So if anybody wants to join, I dropped a link. We do conversations almost daily. There's one going on right now, actually. It's been going on for hours. Feel free to join. Anywho. Bree would only debate on Piers or something like that where she can't mess up too much. What do you mean? Why do you think on Piers she can't mess up? I feel like that's a pretty high stakes debate. Yeah, Mo Kid, I mean, I get what you're saying. You also don't get to debate people with that much clout. You need to climb your way slowly. It's like the UFC. Like I get it. I understand. Like it would be dishonest or just incorrect to say that the only reason why nobody wants to debate me is because they're scared. Like I acknowledge that's simply not true. It's and I said this earlier, maybe before you aren't, it's threat level relative to platform size, right? So my threat level, I think, is probably relatively high, platform size relatively low. It's just not good. You know, if you have a high threat level, a good platform, it's worth the risk. It's a high risk, low reward debating me, I would imagine. So I get that. Let's see. Oh, first past the post voting means whoever gets the most votes takes it all. So is that what you're suggesting? I forgot what that is in reference to. That's like one person, one vote. I mean, that definitely, you do one state from the river to the sea, one person, one vote without a federation. That's probably the worst solution. That would no chance that would work. That could work after like generations of reconciliation, not to start. Too much mistrust. I agree. If that's what you're saying, I agree completely. Pierce is short and Pierce is on her side more or less. So I don't think anymore. I think Pierce has shifted, but maybe, I mean, that's what we just reviewed. Pierce was pretty much on Medhi's side. So yeah, okay. Yaakov, you're saying in France, 70% of inmates are Muslim, and Swiss the same. Yeah. So it sounds like you're just all about demonizing Muslims. And as a Jew, you should be ashamed of yourself because we've been hated for so long, for millennia, people using these arguments about us, pointing to these statistical column anomalies that are connected to Jews, our overrepresentation in media, finance, porn industry, Hollywood. Bro, just a little bit of self-reflection. Like, we've been hated for so long, and you're just turning around and doing this to other people. Now, I will go on to say, I think that countries should be able to determine their immigration policy based on cultural differences. So I am very okay with Europeans deciding to limit immigration from countries that are culturally different. That's their right. That's very much their right. But we don't need to be racist about it. What would happen, Joe Wilder says, what would happen if Gazans just surrendered and let Israel run things? Well, first of all, Netanyahu just said he's not going to agree to any ceasefire until the Trump plan's implemented. So he's essentially saying, no, until there's ethnic cleansing, we're not ending it. That seems to be what he's suggesting now, which is that the whole camp saying, release the hostages and this ends tomorrow. That's how it started. Then they changed it, release the hostages and surrender, meaning Hamas leaves Gaza and then it will end. Now they'll need to change it. There's really nothing they could do. But let's say hypothetically, Gazans surrender. Well, what percent, right? Like, let's say 95% of Gazans agree, you know what, we're going to let Israel take over. You're never going to have 100%. People, Gazans, if they see Israeli soldiers manning their streets and maintaining an occupation there, some of them will attack these soldiers. And as long as a few percent are violent, that will be able to justify a security apparatus that's oppressive towards the 100%. Right? This is what Israel does. You're never going to have 100% accepting an occupation of a foreign army. In fact, I mean, it's normally the majority don't accept it. But let's say the majority are just accept it and live under it. Again, it just takes a few violent actors for Israel to be able to justify all the harm they do. So I don't think there's any way to say what would happen if Gazans just surrender, because it'll never be 100%. It'll never be 100%, and the few violent ones will justify Israel's actions. My channel says Johnny Sins is Jewish. Who is that? I don't know who that is. The Muslim countries are not racist. LOL, self-reflect. Oh, no, most Muslim countries are racist. I don't think that's debatable. I mean, I think there's pretty clear data on that. But, I mean, Israel is one of the most racist countries as well. So, like, again, self-reflection. Like, in an interpersonal context, it's going to be very clear that what you're doing displays a lack of emotional maturity. When somebody refuses to reflect on their own actions and is just trying to blame others, that's a sign of emotional maturity. But when it comes to societies, there's like a little bit more leeway. So it's like perfectly okay for us as a society to criticize other societies and say why that's okay. No, it's just this. It's emotional immaturity. You're just trying to lash out and blame other people. Look at yourself. Look at your own society. We have one of the most racist societies in the world. We literally are. You have 5 million Palestinians that don't have equal rights to us living under our control, and you're just obsessed with demonizing Muslims. Come on, bro. A little self-awareness goes a long way. Dami 1947 says, when will you do the next call-in show? We'll do that next week, I imagine, sometime next week. Your way of saying there's no problem and it's all racism. Yaakov, again, straw man. You're saying your way of saying there is no problem and it's all racism is the easiest thing in the world. When did I say there's no problem? I said I support countries determining what immigration policy makes sense for them. That is a right of a collective to do. But racism doesn't solve that, right? Like, you could say, and this could be confused for racism, but you could say, look, in this country, we value X, Y, Z, and it's, we want to preserve certain values, and we realize that immigration from certain countries are not integrating well and have different values, and we feel like it's creating a tear in the social fabric of society, and we're going to decide to limit immigration from certain countries. I think that's super legitimate. You don't need to demonize full religions or full populations to just have an honest conversation about that. So I would just say that's just a more mature way to talk about it. First past the vote regional is what you have in the US or UK. If you get 20% of the vote, but no one gets more, you win plurality, you win all the seats electors for their region. Okay, interesting. Joe Wilder says, when I was in jail, there was always a debate whether to separate the blacks and the Mexicans or make them live together. There will always be some prejudice. Yep. I mean, I know in jail you definitely connect with your own. There's definitely tribalism in jail. I think you need it to survive. A childhood friend of mine murdered a girl with his older brother who was also in my grade. I'm actually not going to give any names on this because he has a phone in prison and we chat sometimes. So I don't want to. But let's be clear, he deserves to rot in jail. What he did was horrific, but he was 14 at the time, so I definitely have some compassion for him getting life in prison at the age of 14. But we chat. Damn, I hope I didn't give too much information and throw him under the bus. But yeah, so anyways, but what I've understood from our brief Facebook chats is that he had to join a gang for protection, and that's how he got a phone and all that. And the guards are the ones that sell it to them. So it's a whole system. What were you in jail for? I was also in jail, but military prison. Did 2 weeks in military prison. Eliash, it says from previous wars. What's that in reference to, Ellie? Please tell me. And I did see your email, Ellie. I'll get back to you, or maybe we'll just have a call because it'll be more productive. Superpower India says, bro, I have a question. Was Aaron Bushnell death known everywhere in the US, and was it a main topic? Oh yeah, that was definitely dominating the news cycle for at least a few days. Why is Aaron Bushnell coming up? What's going on? You're the third person to ask about him. Can somebody explain what's going on? And I see Superpower India is your name, and you have a Palestine flag. Okay, so some Indians are pro-Palestine. Interesting. Obviously, I knew some, but it's generally, I think that's like the most pro-Israel nation in the world, maybe after America. Joseph Matthew says, who's Aaron Bushnell? That's the guy who lit himself on fire in protest against U.S. support for Israel's operation in Gaza. Joe Wilder, you were in jail for drugs. Okay, sorry to hear that. I hope you're doing well these days. The constant reframe, Yaakov, this is your big brain take that you come back with. Your constant reframe of your claims is Muslims are not responsible for their actions. It's always someone else that makes them do things. No, never said that or suggested that. What I do suggest is, if there's like if you have an issue with a whole society, then the best way to change it is not to just demonize them. What comes of that? Like, do you think any Muslim is interested in what some Israeli has to say about them? You're irrelevant. No one's going to listen to you. Your critique falls on deaf ears. You could exist comfortably in your own echo chamber and complain about Muslims all day. That's not the way to change Muslims. If you change institutions in Muslim societies, well, then that will very quickly change Islamic society. And the Middle East is changing very fast. I mean, women in Saudi Arabia got the right to drive a few years ago. There's these countries are becoming more modern and more liberal. It's not that there's no change being made. I'll tell you what doesn't help. It doesn't help when the U.S. bombs countries and topples these regimes. That doesn't help. And demonizing full groups of people doesn't help. I mean, it's pointless. That's just you needing somebody to be angry at it as opposed to reflecting on how you can improve. Superpower India says, bro, I'm from Kerala. Kerala's in India, but it's the most educated state in India. We don't support the baby killing nation. That's funny. Okay, so you're saying your take is that Kerala is very educated, so that's the most pro-Palestine state in India, but the other ones are less educated and they're pro-Israel. Interesting. Okay. I mean, I do know that India is pretty Islamophobic because of their conflict with Pakistan. So if you're Islamophobic, naturally you're going to be more pro-Israel, I think. If you want to debate someone big, you can try Destiny, but I don't think he's attached to casualty numbers. You have to find something else to disagree with him about. I've reached out to him like twice. Other people have suggested we debate. He's never agreed or gotten back to me, so I'm not sure what to do. I'm sure we could find some things to debate about. I like the chat. I think the chat, Ellie says, I think the chat is disorganized. I'm talking about Hamas journalistic combatant, which you can find on the Al Qassam website under the media section. It lists journalist combatant martyrs. Okay, yeah, okay. So that answers that. But so Ellie, my question is that journalists who are also combatants, is it journalists that their goal was to do journalism for Hamas, or is the Hamas website just listing journalists that have been killed? I think these are three separate things, and I think you should check carefully before I think it's unclear which one you're describing right now. Mokied says just nag more, but I don't think there's something big. I'm not the nagging type. I don't have time. Like, one of the things I dislike the most about this whole space is outreach. Like, I'd probably say like the fastest way for this channel to grow, like, I'm gonna reflect on my weaknesses, right? The fastest way for this channel to grow, one, is to do more outreach to people and bring on bigger guests and organize debates and have conversations with bigger names. For sure, it requires outreach, which I'm so miserable. I hate doing it, so I kind of neglect doing it. The other is to actually do like more high quality content, pre-recorded stuff, edit it nicely. Again, that's not my cup of tea. Don't love doing it. So doing these live streams, chit chatting, giving commentary, like, I feel like I am leaning into a certain strength of mine doing this, but like the other aspects of maintaining a YouTube channel, it's just not playing into my strength. And I think that probably limits my growth. Because I see, and again, I might be biased saying this, and maybe I think too highly of myself. But I think there's I see a lot of creators that seem to be less interesting and have less interesting or informative takes than me that grow much faster. But again, they're doing like pre-recorded, high quality content, less nuanced. Right? I think actually nuance is not good. You want like that. You want that, like those takes that go viral. It's just not the style here. But if anybody wants to help with outreach and kind of do help with outreach or even video editing or any of that, like, let's, reach out. Maybe we could talk about it. Nerd says, bro, Aaron Bushnell is trending in social medias because his life has the potential to be turned into a movie. What is going on? Did something happen with Aaron Bushnell recently that I don't know about? Is it the anniversary? Is it like the 1-year anniversary of his death? Aaron Bushnell. No, it's not 1 year. No, nothing new popping up. Okay, I guess just the chat today likes Aaron Bushnell. Cool. Cool. Mokit says Kerala is the most socialist state in India. I think they have a communist party that wins elections periodically. Huh, interesting. At least you say I could check it myself. Okay, I'll check it out. If you have a link you want to send me, please, I'd like looking at that. I'll tell you, Ellie, the reason I suspect it's not combatants is because Hamas actually seems to be hiding combatant deaths. Like, I think that when we look at the 53,000 confirmed deaths we have, there's very few combatants there, maybe close to none. And one reason is just combatants are more likely to be buried in tunnels. And also you could think that there's some strategy to not wanting Israel to know how many combatants have been killed, so they're not listing them. But it does seem like Hamas doesn't want to give too much information on combatants being killed. Also, they asked families of combatants to not post when their loved ones are killed. So what you're saying is surprising. It almost seems like this is them saying how many journalists have been killed by Israel. That seems much more plausible. But yeah, I don't know. I need to look at it. Israel doesn't have violent uprisings. Again, bro, you're just obsessed with focusing on other people. There's no shortage of things we need to fix about Israel. Like, does it make you feel good about yourself that you just sit in Israel and try to criticize other countries while your country is committing one of the single worst atrocities of the 21st century, or where we've had a leader in power that has divided the country, facing record levels of protests for 8 months leading up to October 7th, who's facing criminal charges. You live in a country whose prime minister has the ICC issued an arrest warrant about them for him. And yeah, we did have Arab mobs lynch Jews and Jewish mobs lynch Arabs in 2021. These were violent uprisings both by Jews and Palestinians. We have a society that's all too racist, all too radical. So again, bro, look in the mirror. Like, come on, bro. Get with the program. Just a bit of self-reflection. It goes a long way. Because here's the thing, Yaakov. You're not going to change Muslim countries. It maybe makes you feel good inside. You know, you get to focus on other people's problems so you don't need to reflect on your own. You're not going to change Muslim countries, but you could impact your country. So you're just wasting your time lashing out rather than changing the country you live in. You're doing us all a disservice, really. Moki, says content creation game is brutal, not for everyone. Yeah, I agree. If it weren't for live streams, I would not be doing content. Like, just live streams are so easy. Click live, talk. That's cool. But like all other aspects of content creation, I'm not good at or I don't like. One day, you know, just so you all know, I have not taken a salary in like 3 years now. I'm an entrepreneur. I have 3 companies that I run, but again, I'll put it this way. I'll get honest about my financial situation. On paper, I would be considered wealthy because I'm a partner in 3 companies and they all have some valuation. But liquidity-wise, I'm not wealthy at all. So I'm not in a position to hire somebody to do all this stuff. Not yet. Once I start getting a salary, I will be maybe I will hire somebody. I'm also going to sell my first company. I'm selling my shares back to my partners because I don't think the company's AI resistant. So I'm going to cash out soon. So yeah, maybe soon I will hire somebody, but the reason I haven't is just because I haven't gotten a salary in 3 years and it doesn't make sense for me to, you know, I have to support myself, but then to also support you know, pay somebody's salary. It's not responsible of me to do. And I like to travel. Like I go to Burning Man every year. Like I spend, you know, I'm a spender. Yo, I feel like chat is trolling me now. Helmet Day says, sorry if I'm asking this wrong. Who is Aaron Bushnell? What the actual fuck is going on? I'm done, okay? The only time I'm gonna no, actually, I'm not gonna commit to not talking about it anymore because if somebody else brings him up, at this point I need to mention it. I'm not gonna say who Aaron Bushnell is. Look him up at this point. Damn, we're going on 2 hours. It's 10 p.m. Okay, Eliash is saying, that's why I said from previous wars, after they listed their combatants, they added the way they died, and many of them died during combat and listed as media. Again, I'd need to see the language because you're saying they're admitting to something they would never want to admit to. Like, even if they have journalists that are combatants, why would they admit that, right? They have like a reason to hide that. So I'd need to see the language they use, but it seems like these are journalists that were killed in combat, meaning by airstrikes and whatnot. That's my suspicion, but who knows? Masha Creation says Free Palestine. I'm cool with that. Apparently, some people think that if you say Free Palestine, then you help pull the trigger on those 2, Yaron Lynchinsky and, damn, I'm forgetting her name. The murder of those 2 Jews, or one was a Christian, one was a Jew. But yeah, so let me give some commentary on that. Like, Obviously, you shouldn't be shooting. You shouldn't be murdering people. That doesn't do anything for Palestine. And not only does that not do anything for Palestine, it actually strengthens the case for Zionism, right? Nothing makes a case for Zionism more than Jews being attacked around the world. Nothing weakens Zionism than Jews feeling safe in the countries they live in. So that's let's just put that on the record. How does somebody get to the point where, they think it's okay to murder somebody? I mean, I think people are literally like seeing massive atrocity live streamed, videos of dismembered children almost daily, parents holding the body parts of their children. Like, this radicalizes people, and people feel like I can't do anything about it, so they're lashing out. Again, this doesn't mean it's okay, but we should always try to find what environmental conditions lead people to do this. I also think there's a little bit of like a Luigi Mangione effect. The fact that he's a hero and still is a hero. It kind of, people now know, especially if you're like attractive and charismatic. I think that plays into Luigi's appeal. But people know that they could be remembered as a hero if they murder somebody for a good cause. So I think how Luigi was treated might incentivize more people to commit murder. And then everyone's trying to blame it on like the pro-Palestine camp and those demonizing Israel. That's why he was killed. And you now have blood on your hands. No, just no. Anti-Israel people have every right to criticize Israel for what they're doing. What radicalized Elias Rodriguez more than anti-Israel rhetoric is Israel's actions. If you don't want people radicalized against Israel, you can't expect people not to talk bad about Israel. Israel should not be committing atrocities, okay? That is the main fuel for radicalization. And then to blame those supporting Palestine for having blood on their hands, this is the same logic that is used by someone like Elias Rodriguez. They're saying, you see, these are Zionists. They have blood on their hands. They're culpable. We could attack them. You're engaging in the same exact logic that Elias Rodriguez justified to murder these two individuals. Come on, guys. Come on. Tamar says, what? Find me on Playa this. Find me on Playa this. I imagine you're saying year. Tamar, where do you camp? Where are you going to be? I'm not 100% sure I'm going to fly out to the Burn this year, but I'm going to try. We'll see. My channel says, what are the companies? I keep saying, it's funny. I said I'm going to sign off an hour ago, but the Q&A keeps going. But I'm starting to lose steam. I do have some beverage that has functional mushrooms and some caffeine, but it's probably a little late to do that. Whatever. Let me give myself a quick second wind. We're going to do 15 more minutes and that's it, okay? This is my first cup of coffee this week. I'm not I have, you could say I definitely have an addictive personality, which is why I'm trying to be careful with all things. But I don't always behave myself. That's for sure. My companies. So the first company I founded was actually a record label called Joy Records based out of Tel Aviv. I stepped down from that years ago, but me and my partner in Joy Records launched a music tech startup called Alpha Music, where we provide businesses with royalty-free music. So I don't know if you know, but if you play music for consumer purposes, you need to pay royalties. Even if it's YouTube or Spotify, you still need to pay royalties. So we collected tens of thousands of hours of royalty-free music. Essentially, we understood that there's a lot of up-and-coming artists that don't care about royalties. They want exposure. So they waive their rights to royalties, and then we get them exposure by putting them in the system. And then we create high quality playlists for different businesses. So we're in around 3,000 stores here in Israel. For those who are Israeli, Lalin, Sabon, Great Shape, Castro, I think maybe even McDonald's now, like they all play our music. So that's one. The second is Grateful Giraffes that I founded with two close friends a few years ago. That's a lifestyle brand focused on health and wellness. but we are doing things a little bit different. We're not creating products and services to start. We're first building this global community of awesome individuals. The idea is to grant ownership of the brand to the community, thereby aligning incentives amongst this awesome collective. And then as a collective, building different products, services, and experiences. So it's essentially like a venture studio where this awesome collective comes together and produces value for the world. So that's Grateful Drafts, which I was full-time doing until I got the offer by Adam to start Head On. So I'm still active in Grateful Drafts, but more so as an advisor. And Head On is the AI platform we're now building, helping people connect with opposing viewpoints. And this, this is just so in line with my passion that when I got the opportunity to co-found this, I had to take it. Bisan Jasser said, you've had a lot of big names in the past. I feel off the channel for a bit. Yeah, like I had Noam Chomsky twice, the Noam Chomsky-Rudy debate. I mean, Rudy's never come back on after that debate because he got upset with me. We still talk, we're still friendly, but I don't think he wants to give me the publicity. I think back then was during COVID. I just had more time. I was home all day, so I was doing a little bit more outreach. I was in like I was more young and energized. I guess I was just turned 30 then. Now I'm 35. I'm tired. I don't want to do outreach. So yeah, there was a time where I was actually getting more views than now, but that was not. That's when I would do debates. Like, I think there's more interest in debates than just these solo streams. Just the debates are much harder to set up. But honestly, I should get back to organizing those debates. Imagination Scene with an amazing question. Did you talk about Aaron Bushnell yet? No, I'm going to wait till the next stream. Swiss Traveler. Oh, this one's insightful. Aaron basically peaked. Nerd says, bro, I wish to adopt someone from Gaza. Is it possible? I have a stable business and a good income. Interesting. I actually don't know, but I imagine there's a lot of NGOs. Yeah, it's worth. I would look into that, and that's very nice of you, Nerd. If you want, you could support me on Patreon. Although all good, I'm not going hungry. Obviously, I appreciate all the patrons, all the members here on YouTube, all the super chats. I invest that back into the channel. So yeah, if anybody who does want to support the show, I'd appreciate that. But I'm not going hungry quite yet. But I will need to start getting a salary soon. I mean, 3 years no salary, that's not easy. Thankfully, I got into crypto in 2017, bought Bitcoin at 2K. Obviously not enough, but that helped. That helped me in life a little bit. Lonerbox talked about it. Hamas have soldier journalists that document their actions. It's appear on their website. Not every dead journalist is a soldier, but some of them are. Okay, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like the IDF also has some like journalists and press people, right? Tomorrow you camp at Deep Playa Surprise. Oh, that sounds fun. What's that location? Where's that at? Do you do regional burns? I've done a few. So few people know this, but Israel has the third biggest burn in the world, mid-burn. It's around 10,000 people. They haven't done it. I think they did a mini one after October 7th, but not since. But interestingly, proportion to population size, mid-burn is by far the biggest burn. So Israeli, there's a strong burner community here, and that's pretty good. So I've done that one. I did Love Burn in Miami, and then Burning Man I've done it on 4 occasions now. Midburn's great. There was Midburn planned in November of 2023, a month after October 7th, in the same area. So the attack on Nova was horrific. Had they waited a month, there would have been a much greater opportunity for something horrific just because of the scale of Midburn. So I actually had tickets to that, but obviously it was canceled. My channel says my genes are from Castro. Okay, well, next time you're in Castro, that's our music playing. It's not, we blame this. So this is Mokieta. What you're saying is in response to the killing of those two individuals. I'm sorry, I'm referring to them. I just can't remember the woman's name. It's not that we blame pro-Palestinians, but people who use unhinged rhetoric like saying Zionism is Nazism bear some responsibility. Okay, I could see that. I mean, look, no shortage of people came out after that attack and said it was justified and should be continued. I mean, that's clearly incitement, right? And you could say that they're contributing to it. I would agree with that. But you can't just paint a broad brush and say everybody who said free Palestine or everyone who's criticized Israel is responsible. Bisan Jester says, how do you get them out? They are trapped and don't allow kids to live. They started letting some people out. I think there are ways, but it's good to look. Somebody should look into these NGOs. Eliashit said, Hamas does list combatants from previous wars, each combatant with their full biography. You just miss it too quickly, buddy. No. What you're saying is right. I agree with that completely. They do that. That's not even debatable. What I questioned was if they are going to acknowledge that this person was both a journalist and a combatant. It seems like that's not something they would want to admit to, but you might be right. Again, I'm not dying on this hill. I just don't know. I'm speculating. Tamar, you've also been in love, Bernie. Yeah, it's cool. It's got a little too much Miami vibe, but like, it's cool having a burn on the beach where you could swim every morning, Like if Burning Man had a body of water, that'd be sick. Which one's in Austin? Superpower Andrew says, how long have you been a supporter of Palestine and their voices? So, I served in the IDF from 2008 to 2011. I was never raised to hate Palestinians, but I definitely knew nothing about them. I thought we need to fear them. They want to kill us. We need to defend themselves against us. In the army, even when I was doing checkpoints and serving in the West Bank, I didn't realize that what I was doing was wrong. I didn't realize how humiliating it was to them to need to wait at checkpoints and have like a teenager search their car. But I always treated them well. Even sometimes I would get like called out for it. Like one time at a checkpoint, I saw some guy had like bread and cheeses that it seemed like he was selling out of his car. So I bought some and they said, I can't do that. And then another time I had to watch these two teenagers that threw stones. They were like zip tied and blindfolded in the van overnight. So until we bring them to the police for processing, and I had to go check on them every few hours. And I felt immense compassion for those two. And, I had to bring them food and they said, bring them hummus and pita. I went into the fridge and I saw there's like Jello and pudding and I brought them Jello and pudding as well. Cause why not, like let these dudes eat. And they got mad at me for that. So again, I was definitely part of the occupation without recognizing that it was bad, but I definitely didn't hate Palestinians. In the subsequent years after my release, I started to learn about their narrative, see them differently. Maybe psychedelics helped a little bit, started to understand that we're all connected, we're all one. And then the 2014 operation in Gaza happened, and I saw two distinct narratives: Israel under attack, Gaza under attack. And I'm like, why is nobody talking about the humanity of both sides? So I started writing Facebook statuses and trying to humanize both sides. And that's kind of what got me into this whole space. It's been on and off. Like, as I mentioned, my main focus has been entrepreneurial stuff, So content's always been like just a passion project, or not just content and peace building's been a passion project. But yeah, and then as of like 6 months ago, I've been doing more because Head On is all about finally my job is now connected to peace and reconciliation. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, so you could say it was 2014. Tamar says we haven't been placed this year in terms of Burning Man. Did you go last year? Nova exhibit was amazing. Yeah, I did. I went to the Nova sunrise thing. I was there for hours dancing, ran into a lot of people who I haven't seen. For those who don't know, there was a Nova exhibit at Burning Man. And then one morning it started with a very sad ceremony in honor of those who were killed at Nova. And then at the exact hour that the rockets were shot, that the attack happened, it was the same DJ that was DJing when the attack happened, came to Burning Man, started a set, and then for hours it was just this crazy dance party, and it was happy. It was beautiful. And I was running into all sorts of people who I've met throughout the years in Israel and LA and whatnot. I even met a Nova survivor there. So yeah, it was cool. It's cool. Super Parent says, I checked your channel, saw videos from 4 years before. Yeah, I started doing this YouTube stuff during COVID, but again, it's been very, very part-time. Swiss Traveler, mate, before you end this live, say anything about the airman guy, forgot his name. Yeah, what was his name? Aaron Bushnell. Yeah, rest in peace. Rest in peace. Please explain why Rudy is mad at you. I don't know if he's still mad at me, but like, I don't know if you watched the Noam Chomsky Rudy debate, but at the very end, it blew up, and I was trying to give Noam the last word because he had to sign off, and Rudy wanted one more turn, and I ended up having to like mute Rudy because he was arguing with me, and Noam was just waiting, and he gave us more time than he initially agreed to. And then Rudy feels like I treated him very unfairly during the debate. I don't really agree. But it was a little bit of a falling out. But we've spoken. I see him here and there. We still catch up on WhatsApp. Like, it's all good between us. Like, we still, have like a friendship. But he's just never agreed to come on the channel. He's never explicitly said he doesn't want to come on anymore, but he just, he just hasn't done it. So my channel says Rudy was humiliated by Noam Chomsky. Yeah, I think they speak such different languages, like Rudy has this like a very different approach of how he talks about things, and he's not an academic. He's more like a influencer and commentator or an activist. And like Chomsky's like a scholar, and Chomsky like he knows what he's doing when it comes to that. Just keep driving the same message about Israel, about a supremacist system, about human rights abuses. Rudy's mistake in that debate, in my opinion, he was meeting Chomsky in his specialty. Chomsky would say something about Israel. Rudy would then be on the defensive, and that's kind of where he was dealing with Chomsky in his strength. It's like, you need to fight a crocodile. Don't jump in the water to fight it in the water. Try to fight it when it comes out on the land. So Rudy dived headfirst into the swamp trying to fight the crocodile. What he should have said is like, look, I maybe we won't agree on all the critique of Israel, but I want to talk about solutions. And he could have driven it there, because Chomsky's never been a huge solution person. He's more on like, he's great at the critique. And granted, solutions are harder, so I understand why people gravitate towards critique. But that would have been a way where I think Rudy would have been more in his comfort zone relative to Noam. Gita Lawrence says, I was detained in Colombia protests for Gaza. Cops were like, our values, Jews are the heroes and Arabs are the evils. Don't try to change that. Wait, I'm not sure what you're saying, Gyad. I'm sorry. I was detained in Colombia protests for Gaza. Oh, the cops were like, We value Jews. Jews are the heroes and Arabs are evil. Don't try to change that. Interesting. Well, that's fucked up. And good for you for fighting the good fight. Giada or Giada, I hope. Let me know how that's pronounced. Bisan Jasser says, why do you think he could handle Nom? Why did I do that matchup? I had a feeling they would not be speaking the same language and that it might not be the most productive conversation. I did know that ahead of time. I did it one as a friend to Rudy. I wanted to give him that opportunity, and two, for self-interested reason. I knew it would be widely popular, and it is by far the most watched thing on this channel. It's, I think, at 650,000 views. It's not the most popular video I've done, though. In 2016, I went to East Jerusalem with a sign saying, I'm a Jew and I love you. If you love me back, give me a hug. And I blindfolded myself and stood there, and I got hugs in East Jerusalem, and that went mega viral in the Arab world, in Israel. I was on the news, but that was in the Facebook days. So that got like 10 million views on Facebook through all the platforms. That wasn't here on this channel. I did upload it here years later, but that was after its viral moment. But yeah, so that's why I decided to do that matchup. I'm sure there's better matchups I could have done. Do you do any of this work on the fly? It would be pretty wonderful, Tamar asks. So I'll tell you, last year I had this idea and this idea came to me like the night and morning of the Nova Festival. My plan was to set up a table on the Esplanade with an Israeli and Palestinian flag. I found people that gift me the flags or use the flags for this. So actually, no, the idea came the day before, and I already found people to give me the flags. The plan was to do it the day after Nova. But on the way back to camp from Nova at like 11 a.m., I lost my phone. And then I just couldn't coordinate with the people. I didn't know where their camps were because it was all written in my phone, so I just couldn't do it. Oh, I didn't explain the idea. So I wanted to put a table on the Esplanade, Israeli and Palestinian flag, saying former IDF wants to talk about peace, something like that. But then I didn't have my phone, and I was all, I was but by that point of the burn, you're losing steam. So it was hard for me to find the strength and motivation to put it all together without my phone and all that. But maybe this year I'll set something like that up. Adar, you used to have an anonymous Palestinian who went by Zahir. You still in touch with him? I thought he was informative, appreciated him. Yeah, Zahir's great. Interestingly, he just joined our Discord today. So we chatted a few months ago, but he just joined the server. I would love to get him on the channel more. I think he got a fair bit of backlash for doing things with Israelis and stuff from his own community. So he kind of backed away. But yeah, he's great. He's very informative. He also has like this very sexy British voice, though he is Palestinian, and he's very informative. Yeah, it'd be good to get him back on. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Tamar. So you're saying it would be good to run into a new discussion on the fly. If I go this year, that's going to be one of my goals, to try to set that up. Does Rudy believe Arabs and Palestinians should get the right to vote? I'm not sure. I had there's an interview on this channel. It's like a in-person one-on-one with Rudy and I from like 4 years ago. Did we talk? That's an interesting one. You guys could look that up. But back then, his view was the whole land should be Israel. Palestinians should get more local rights, but less national rights, which I think excludes the right to vote. I'm not sure if that's his position anymore, but maybe we'll get him back on. Okay, we have somebody who wrote something in Arabic. Do we have any Arab speakers? I'm going to pull this up on screen for, Actually, I could just screenshot this shit and get an LLM to. Let's see what this guy's saying. Do we want to put some money if it's something hateful or loving? Oh no, hold up. Let's see. You know, do you guys ever lie in bed at night and just try to remember what life was like before ChatGPT? I don't even remember those days. Oh, cool. It's a positive message. I saw this video link from WhatsApp app. I am from Qatar. Good to see you here, man. Good to see you here. Which WhatsApp group is someone did? Where'd you see this? Okay, we have more Arabic in the chat. Whatever. Okay, I don't want to just keep screenshotting the shit. What'd you say, +1 boy? What are you saying? What does this say? Is the video about Palestine? Okay, yeah. Yeah, Tamar, this year we're gonna do it. Have you ever watched Defamation by Yoav Shamir? Great documentary. No, I think how do I pronounce your name, by the way? Is it Zhao? I'm down. I heard good things about it. I think you recommended it in the past, but I haven't seen it. Ellie, you said you sent me the Kasam website. Okay, thanks so much. Again, I'm not like arguing with you. I just shared what I thought might be a different explanation, but you very well might be right about them listing journalists as combatants. Like there might be those that are journalists and combatants. So, I mean, Joe, you spelt out your name, but that's how your name's spelled. So would it be Joao? Joao? Where are you from, by the way, if you don't mind sharing? Joao. AKA John in English. Oh, hey, John. What's up? We got our Qatari friend. So look, Qatari friend, I imagine you could speak English because you're listening to the stream, but like you're making me translate all this shit. Saw the video in a Save Gaza group. Oh, cool. Okay, nice. I'm glad to see this content's making its way around. Okay, I think let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. Thank you guys for tuning in. This was great. 2 hours and 30. This is a good one. We'll be back next week. I hope to see you all then.